glanced at me and then nodded to Rohan. She looked guilty, but whether it was from looking or being caught was anyone's guess. Rohan looked at me. I am here to train you before taking you to Jiva's home and presenting you to your people. If you do not return with me, then you will be hunted and killed. Or you will kill those sent to hunt you and then return to Jiva's home to kill the rest there. Those are your options. Chapter 104, Some Answers. Rohan delivered the last words with a deadpan voice as if the possibilities didn't affect him at all. I took my first true look at the man who identified himself as Rohan Smith. He had the dark skin color of someone from Nepal, black hair, and deep brown eyes. His face was covered in a well-trimmed beard and mustache. He was shorter than most men in America at 5 feet 4 inches. Though that didn't surprise me much, as it was the average height for those who come from Nepal. This made my dad's reported height rather unusual. In short, this man was almost my exact opposite. My pale skin, blue eyes, and white hair stood out in contrast. Seemingly unaware or most likely uncaring of my inspection, Rohan continued to speak. We should sit and continue our conversation. Not all I have to say is as gloomy as I have spoken so far. I took the chair Charlie had been in, and Edythe took the other chair. Once seated, Rohan began again. Much of what I can say right now will be a simple overview. You will learn more in depth once you return. For starters, I can tell you that every 15 to 20 years, each of the tribal leaders sends out a representative they chose to go to different countries' learning centers to ensure that the overall tribe stays aware of the world. That is how your father came to be in America. I had a number of questions, but held back for him to continue. Your birth, however, was not allowed. Once he knew of your conception, Devansh should have brought your mother directly to Jiva's home to allow you to be born with the tribes. When we learned of his passing just before his return, we had no idea you existed. It was not until your mother sent word to us years later that we learned of you, and by then it was too late. I could not hold back my question at this point. How did you learn of my father's death but not his marriage and my coming birth? Rohan gave a deep sigh. I do not know. My purpose here is to train you in the ways you will need in order to earn your place among the tribe. A scout was sent to evaluate you earlier this year, and he reported some concerning things. Your abilities seem to have been prematurely activated. Prematurely activated. The clan's abilities should not awaken until you reach the age of 25. That is why all those sent into the world must return before that date. The fire's awakening can be traumatic for some. I will need to evaluate your awakening and learn from it as well as teach you to use it. Edythe spoke for the first time. Will I be allowed to accompany him when he returns? Rohan didn't hesitate. No. Only he can return at this time. If he is accepted, then he could petition for your acceptance. However, no one of your kind has ever been petitioned for, much less accepted. Though we have heard of the Cullen Coven even on our mountain tops. A most innovative way of survival, I commend you and your patriarch. I could tell that he was leaving something out there, but I didn't want to push. After a moment of silence, Rohan stood up and announced. I have given you much to think about and will allow you time to discuss it. I am staying at the hotel in town, room 13, if you would like to seek me out. Until we meet again. He gave a slight bow and left. Edythe broke the silence. I don't like the idea of us being separated, especially for an unknown amount of time. I took her hand. I feel the same way. But if I don't go, then we will be fighting them off for the rest of our lives. Maybe once I am there, I can. I don't know, renounce them and return. We have to learn more before making a decision. That night, I helped Edythe make dinner. Though we didn't talk much, both of us were lost in our own thoughts. The next morning, I kissed Edythe goodbye. Then Jasper and I went on our normal run. We ended up in our usual sparring spot. Jasper was teaching me about controlling my balance to better help with feints during a fight. The way he explained it, that was the way older vampires fought. Controlling your opponent's actions through your own, and when you created a big enough opening, you brought all your strength to bear. A voice came from the west side of the clearing, "Forgive me, but why are you attempting to compete with a vampire with just your normal human strength? Your base form strength does appear unusual for your clan, but still limiting." Surprised by his presence, I still responded. "I can't always fight in my tiger form. So, we spent part of my morning training in my normal form." It took me a moment to realize that Jasper was standing in a defensive stance against Rohan. "Jasper, it's okay. This is Rohan Smith, I told you about him. He is from my father's village." Jasper relaxed a bit. "Quiet on your feet, aren't you?" Rohan looked at Jasper for a moment before replying, "Sorry, I guess I should have announced myself." Jasper just gave him a careful nod. "You were saying that Thomas here can use more strength than he is now." Rohan nodded. "I guess I should ask just what all you can do so far, Thomas. The scout just said you woke your gift, so he immediately returned to report it." The memory of a weird fox trying to take a bite out of me a few months ago came to mind. I knew it looked nothing like the foxes I had seen in this area. "I take it that scout was the fox that tried to take a bite out of me." Rohan nodded. "Well, all I can do is take the shape of a white tiger. So far, that's all I have been able to do." I described the first change during my interaction with Henry and my training since then. "All he can do?" Jasper scoffed. "He takes out a vampire elder in his first change and then takes on a vampire that makes sport out of killing other vampires and kills him. Don't let him sell you short on his strength, Rohan. Edward couldn't beat that vampire's brother, who was the weaker of the two. It took 3 of us in the end to beat a vampire that was weaker than the one he fought alone." I really thought Jasper was overselling my strength, but I just shook my head in reply. Rohan gave me his full attention. "Well, let's see your tiger form. I would like to see what I have to work with. Your entry to the tribe will not be without battle. Your return will shove back everyone whose place took a step forward with the passing of Devansh." I got undressed and set my clothes apart, and then shifted to my tiger form. I watched Rohan and saw his eyes widen for a moment. He walked up to me and started to inspect my form, walking around me like he was taking mental measurements. He walked over to a tree and pushed against it, then asked, "Would you strike this tree, please, Thomas? I would like to gauge your strength." Obliging him, I walked to the tree and struck. The tree exploded where I hit it and started to fall away from us. Rohan looked impressed and nodded his head. "How much strength did you strike with?" Seeing as he asked me a direct question, I assumed he wanted me to change back, so I did. "That was about 3/4 of my strength." "Impressive, very impressive for your clan. My first impression is that you are easily the biggest and strongest of your generation. Can you describe your thoughts when you change?" I described to him my fire that had always been in my mind and its increase after my mother's death. Then I finally explained how it changed and became more intense when I had my first shift. His next question made me feel like I was not nearly as bright as I had always believed. "Have you ever tried to just pull in a portion of the fire and not all of it?" Chapter 105, International Roaming Plan. I looked at him dumbfounded. "What do you mean?" Rohan just looked at me. "I mean what I asked. Have you ever tried to just pull in a bit of the fire in your mind? More specifically, pull in just the heat it gives off. That should enhance your overall physique." I didn't know that was possible. So, I guess my answer would be no. I haven't ever tried that. I should have expected his response. "Well, try it." I opened my mind to the fire and out of reflex it entered my body, making the full change. I had been working to make my changes faster so often that it was now automatic. Now, I needed to try and undo all that work. Once I was steady in my tiger shape, I pushed the fire out of my body and reverted. Then I took a deep breath and tried it again. This time I tried to let only a little in, tried to reach for just the warmth of the fire instead of the fire itself. But as soon as I reached out, the fire started to enter my body, and it all followed. This was going to be hard. When I refocused on my surroundings after multiple tries, I saw Jasper watching me and Rohan was gone. Where did he go? I asked Jasper. He left about 20 minutes ago. Didn't say anything at all, just nodded towards me and turned around then walked away. We should get moving too, or we are going to be late for school. Though I for one can't wait for it to be done. I laughed at Jasper's excitement to be away from the den of hormonal teens, his words. Though, thinking about it as I walked over to where my clothes were. I guess the way emotions affected him, the raw emotions that ruled most every action at school, a den of hormonal teens was a fair description. What do you have planned for after school? I don't imagine you are heading directly to college. He shook his head, no. Emmett and I have been putting out stories of us taking a year off and traveling until we decide what we are going to school for. I have yet to decide on what I will major in this time around. I laughed. I guess I should probably start doing that myself. What do I want to do with myself? Maybe a video game designer. That game you guys sometimes play at night looks like fun. It's called Dark Age of Camelot, right? Jasper smiled and nodded his head. It is definitely a time sink, and what else do we have to do? You should see how many of our kind were addicted to EverQuest in its heyday. You should come by one night and make a character for World of Warcraft, it has potential if they fix the PvP system anyway. The two friends continued their conversation about gaming all the way to the police station. Later that day after school, Edythe and I were sitting in the kitchen when there was a knock at the door. I got up to answer it and saw Rohan standing there. Hello, Rohan. How can I help you? Would you like to come in? Sure, but I won't be staying long. He entered the house and greeted Edythe in his stoic demeanor. I just came by to drop off a mental exercise I recommend you begin using. It should help you focus and learn to control the changes, eventually. Most changelings don't have this issue. Once they reach 25 years old, they begin to learn to slowly work with the building fire. You have skipped all the beginning steps and made the full shift the first time, now I need to teach you the right way. It is honestly a surprise to me that your mind didn't revert to a beast when you made your first change, though it could have something to do with the gift of your grandmother's bloodline. I had a thought and asked, would this work for the Quileute shifters as well? They have lingering anger issues in the early years according to what I have been told. I don't know. Your grandmother had difficulty explaining her gift to the tribe and our methods didn't work well for her either. She only had the two shapes, wolf and human. Edythe asked, is it possible that Thomas won't respond to these methods as well? Rohan paused for a moment. I would think that to be most unlikely. The gifts of his father's clan are vastly different from his grandmother's tribe. When she married into the clan her gift was added to theirs. Thomas's bloodline is rooted in evolution you could say. If a gift is added through conception, then his line will add the strongest traits from the inferior one and become stronger in the next generation. Perhaps this weekend we should sit and discuss your return. I can also give you more information at that time. Do you by chance speak Nepali? I shook my head, no, but learning a new language shouldn't take me too long. Rohan stood up, it may help ease your way into the tribe. Nepali is something of a bridge language for the area. Many of the people have their own individual languages but they all know Nepali. Before he could leave, I asked quickly, you tend to jump between clan and tribe quite a lot. Is there a reason? The English language leaves much to be desired for nuance. But the closest thing you would understand is that there are many clans that make up the tribe, and clan leaders are led by the tribal leader. I look forward to the weekend. Rohan stood and simply walked out of the house. I looked at Edythe after he left. Is it just me or are his mannerisms just weird? Almost robotic? It feels like once he has conveyed his message, he is done with the discussion and leaves without seeing if you acknowledge what he has said. Edythe shook her head, I thought it was just me that thought that. He has a habit of just dumping his knowledge or thoughts and ending it there. He isn't rude, so much as he acts like, I don't know. Maybe emotionless would be a good description of it. My mind wandered around the way Rohan acted. Maybe it's like he said. A language issue? I think I should start learning Hindi right away. Edythe nodded her head. I can look into a copy of the language from Rosetta Stone, and with your echoic memory it will take no time at all. I will learn at the same time to help. I looked at Edythe and felt a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with my shape changing. You haven't said much about how my being gone will affect you. She took my hand. I was wondering when you were going to ask. And the real answer is that I do not know. For vampires, once an attachment is formed, it is very hard to deny. Carlyle told you about our emotions and how they can rule us, so it is rare that we actually separate once those bonds are formed. Even though I was somewhat expecting her words, they still hit me hard. Here I was, somewhat excited to go and meet my family, well, my extended family that is. But to do so I would have to leave my current one for an unknown amount of time. I felt guilty for leaving her like this. I wish they would let you come with me. Edythe gave me a warm smile, and I wish I could come. I even looked up the weather patterns for the area during the time you will be there, and there is 12 to 14 hours of daylight with little cloud cover even during monsoon season. It's an area that just wouldn't be good for my kind, I guess you could say. Maybe that's why we have never heard of a vampire from there. I gave a deep sigh, my guilt settling like a shroud over my shoulders. Trying to banish the gloomy atmosphere, Edythe said, I was going to tell you after school was done, but since we are talking about it now. I have a new cell phone coming for you. It has an international roaming plan so you can keep in contact with me. I am not saying you have to call every day, because you will be working on your abilities there, but once a week or so would go a long way in keeping me sane. I leaned over the corner of the table and gave Edythe a kiss that I hoped shared my thoughts and feelings with her. I even contemplated making the shift to Tiger so she could read my mind to see the depth of my feelings for her. When we separated, Edythe stood up and walked over to her school bag that she had brought with her. She pulled out a little box and turned back to me. If you remember, back before our first dance I had to be out of sight because of the sunny days here. Well, a group of us went to Denver to look into our company there, and I visited the mall there in an effort to try and relate to you in some way. When she brought up the mall, I felt my body go cold. I was better now, but it was still an emotionally charged subject. Seeing my reaction, Edythe began talking faster. Well, while I was there, I found a memorial for the victims of the shooting and happened to see something I thought you should have. I, kinda had to use my compulsion powers to get it actually. She opened the box, and I saw a heart-shaped locket on a cushion of red velvet. The front was half pearl and the other half was dark green with specks of red in it. I had never seen it before, but I knew instantly what it was. Pearl and heliotrope, also called bloodstone, I mumbled from the memory of that day. A memory of standing at a counter and going over the details with a clerk. Chapter 106, Beginnings of Control. I stood with my arms raised and fists clenched, my eyes trying to take in every movement of Jasper, who danced just out of arm's reach. Waiting for the moment his left foot was in the air, I kicked my right leg forward towards his chest. Jasper just lowered his body and took the hit on his arms, the impact only sent him a single step back. He quickly jumped into my guard as my leg was resetting itself on the ground and threw a right hook, trying to get around my own guard. His movements were blindingly fast, but I could still see them if only barely. Knowing my guard would break if I pulled back, I shifted forward and allowed the blow to land on the meat of my left shoulder. Knowing my shoulder was going to be numb for a few seconds after the impact, I shifted my weight to allow a body blow with my right fist. My hit landed on Jasper's ribs, but to minimal effect. Still, he stepped back outside my range and gave me a smile. I returned the smile with a left jab that was as much me shaking off the numbness in my shoulder as an attempt to keep him at a distance. Thankfully, the action did both. Jasper kicked this time, a low sweeping kick designed to get me off balance. I blocked with my leg, and it felt like someone hit my shin with a metal baseball bat. It was tricky to acknowledge the pain and still try to keep my mind on the heat that entered my body from my mind, but I managed to hold on. Trying to get him on the defensive, I made another swing toward his ribs, and when he dropped his hands to protect himself from the body blow, I turned it into an uppercut. I thought I had him dead to rights, but the bastard just tilted his head to the side as the blow barely grazed his cheek. Jasper sent a light jab that connected to my face and followed it with an overhand right that felt like it had been shot from a cannon. The blow had me stumbling back a couple of steps. "Yeah, get him, Jazz. He got your shirt dirty, and I liked that one." Alice cheered from the side. I shook the stars from my head and tried to focus on Jasper again. I caught the telltale movement of his left shoulder and knew he was going for another hook, but this time with his offhand to catch me unaware. In response, I sent a counter and put more strength into it, hoping to score my first knockdown ever on him. Unfortunately, we both missed as I put too much focus on my punch and lost control of the fire in my head, and made the full change. My first impulse was to leap forward and tackle Jasper to the ground and pin him under my paws. However, today we were working on my control. Jasper stepped back and dropped his gloved hands just in time to catch Alice as she jumped at him and smothered his face in kisses. "My hero!" she cried out. "Edythe has my chores for the next week now." I stood there on all fours, panting in exhaustion. Even in my tiger form, my arms, legs, still ached from the many absorbed blows. I shook my head and turned toward Edythe and Rohan, who stood off to the side. I shifted back to human as Edythe handed me another pair of shorts to put on while I tried to catch my breath. "I need to work on my stamina more. It's the one thing both my forms lack." Rohan agreed with my statement, "That is one weakness your whole clan possesses. Though many ignore it and continue to rely only on strength. Still, you are learning to control your inner fire with remarkable speed." I acknowledged his comment with a nod. It had been 2 weeks now since he had given me the mental exercise. I enjoyed the way it helped calm me down. I could go about 10 minutes with me actively pulling on the heat from my inner fire while keeping the rest in my mind. This allowed me near vampire strength and sturdiness. This also granted me and Jasper the ability to actually fight in my human form during training now. That fighting helped me practice more and get better quickly. Rohan said that eventually it will become second nature to control the fire and discover the full range of my abilities. Rohan also seemed to believe that my early shifting had to do with my grandmother's gift. He explained that Nepal clan members all had to wait until their bodies were at their physical peak, typically around age 25, to begin working on allowing the fire to enter their bodies. However, the Quilut gift appears to accelerate the body's change to its peak shape quickly after the first change occurs, provided it occurs before maturity. I told him about the belief that the Quiluts have about the proximity of a vampire awakening their gift. He showed excitement for the first time since meeting him, learning that bit of lore. I, however, still had questions about little things like my lifespan. Will I lose the years my body seems to be blowing past? Will I continue to age after my body is at its peak? Rohan had no answers for me. Just the little he knew about my grandmother. She had no reason to shift in an area that had no vampires, and she did age, apparently. From what he knew, she did not look young when she left the clan once her husband died of old age, but nor was she reported to be elderly. He didn't know the reason she left either. He just assumed it was because her mate died. So, on one hand, I could possibly be 25 forever so long as I continued to shift often. But on the other hand, there was a worry that the energy to make the shift had to come from somewhere, and that was possibly my lifespan. I needed to go visit the Quilut tribe and see if they have any answers. But oh yeah, I also just happened to kick mud all over the one elder who would have most of the answers. Go figure. My best bet would be to go ask Sam and plant the same worry in him so he can be the one asking the questions. That or go back with my hat in my hand and ask forgiveness for being a rude prick to the eldest elder. Yeah, that wasn't happening. Rohan was also getting impatient with my delaying our return to Nepal, but I was insisting that I not miss my girlfriend's first birthday since we got together. I felt guilty enough about what could be considered abandonment in the vampire circles. No one was saying anything, but I could still feel it. It doesn't help that I am my own worst critic, and just my luck, I have to live with myself. Edythe flicked my forehead. Get out of your own head, Thomas. Then she handed me my mother's locket. I was wary about wearing it because if I had to make the shift quickly, it would definitely break the chain and possibly get lost. But it didn't feel right leaving it in a box on my dresser. I ran my thumb across the front of it after hanging it around my neck, then shot Edythe a smile. She really went above and beyond for me, seeing things I never would have. I halted my thoughts there because if I didn't, then I would just start my downward spiral again. It's time better spent enjoying her company while I can. Chapter 107, Powwow. It was ironic that when I got home that morning, it was just in time to run into Billy and Jacob. They had come to invite us to the Quileute powwow being held the coming weekend. Bella begged off, claiming she had plans, but I agreed to go without hesitation. Jacob was obviously bummed that Bella wasn't interested. But Billy seemed happy that I wanted to be there. We don't usually hold it this early, but the tribe has been a bit restless this year. Emily being attacked is just the latest event that has the tribe uneasy. I hadn't thought much about Emily once she got out of the hospital, so I asked. How is she, by the way? The nurses were worried that she hadn't gone in to get her stitches removed yet. Billy turned away just a bit when I brought that up. She was visiting her family at the Maka reservation when it was time to get them removed, so she just had it done there. They were amazed at the number and tightness of the stitching. Having some trouble getting them all. But they said the scarring was minimal compared to what they expected or even thought possible. It amused me that even after all the evidence that the Cullens were not the normal vampires, the Quileute still distrusted them so much. Is there anything specific I should wear or not wear? Billy shook his head. So long as you don't show up in fake tribal wear, you will be fine. Many find the appropriation of our customs disrespectful. Jacob was quick to speak up. I thought that Thomas was related to the tribe by blood, just one generation removed. He could wear traditional clothing, if he wanted to. I laughed. Let's not push Elder Quill into an early grave by me trying to claim a birthright that isn't mine by the old laws. I would feel like an imposter trying to do that anyway. I will just wear a mix of blue and green. I understand that blue represents sky, water, and protection, while green represents earth, nature, harmony, healing, and endurance. Billy nodded his head. Those would be good colors, Thomas. Thanks for respecting and learning your heritage even though it is unfair to you. That weekend, I drove straight to Billy's house, leaving my truck there. It was still early, but I knew that there was a good bit of last-minute setting up to do and wanted to help. Sam and Emily were there and never far from each other. I finally met Jared in his human form officially, and he seemed like a good guy. He and Sam were not sure who the next to face the change would be, but Paula or Jacob were the front runners. Everyone took turns disappearing to change into their traditional clothing, and I was amazed at the vibrant colors. It was easy to tell what clothing was passed down through time and what was made with newer colors and materials. There were tourists everywhere, and for the most part, they were very respectful. It was funny hearing the children asking questions that were innocent from their lips but would have started a fight coming from an adult. I wandered the booths and sampled all the food available, just to taste the traditional foods, no other reason. Just before noon, I found myself walking on the sidewalk alongside a traditionally dressed Quileute woman. It wasn't on purpose, just happened to be wandering in the same direction at the same pace. It was a full block before I realized I knew her. I was walking with Leah. She seemed sad, along with a heaping bit of anger mixed in. Before breaking into her silence, I took note of her outfit. On her head, she sported a beaded bandana with running wolves depicted, and at the back, she had 2 feathers sticking straight up. I was later to learn they were albatross feathers she had collected the day we met at the beach. Around her neck hung a silver and turquoise necklace, the centerpiece being a howling wolf's head. Her dress was predominantly yellow, the color depicting harvest, abundance, life, sun, and occasionally death. The hem of her sleeves and dress, also her moccasins, were white, depicting peace, purity, spirituality, and new beginnings. Finally, the sash around her waist was red, the color of life, war, love, strength, and courage. The last thing I noticed was that her long, silky black hair had been done up into 2 tight braids. She was truly beautiful. I wondered if I could sneak a picture to show it to Edythe. She must have finally felt my eyes on her as she turned to look at me, her face full of anger. I am not some streetwalker that you can hire, so stop staring at me. I was reminded of our first meeting and smiled in reflex. No, but you are a remarkably attractive woman I just happened to find myself walking next to. I fully believe that if I didn't notice your incredible outfit, then it would have been an insult to you and anyone who helped you make it. Fine, go insult her then. She is over there dancing with the large asshole in red and black. Leah pointed to Sam and Emily. When she realized what she said and who she was talking to, her cheeks began to burn red. It was hard to tell if it was in anger or embarrassment. Finally, after a moment, she seemed to deflate and almost wither into herself. Ha! Why is it you? You always catch me at the worst times possible. She seemed to sway for a moment, so I reached out to steady her. I think you need to sit down before you fall down. I directed her to a bench nearby that was thankfully open. My grip on her shoulder was light yet firm, letting her know I wasn't merely suggesting as I moved her to sit. As she started to sit, she shrugged my hand off. So pushy. I was just fine. I only stumbled a little. I gave her a steady look. I can see under all the beauty, you look exhausted. When was the last time you got a good night's sleep? It feels like months. I haven't been sleeping more than a couple of hours at a time lately. I am almost getting used to it. What's been keeping you up? Stress from school being over and not sure what you're doing next. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but that's a bit of it, yes. I had everything all planned out. What school I was going to, what I wanted out of life. Everything. But now, it's all changed. How much of what I wanted was because of what he did? Am I a different person now that he isn't a part of my life? Would I be content still trying to be the person I wanted to be with him? Or would it all just come out hollow years later without him? Top all that off with a rage that washes over me like a 30-foot wave sometimes. Only to be replaced by an anger that feels like it is cooking me alive. Sometimes I feel like there is a caged animal inside trying to break free to rip and tear apart everything around me. She was breathless by the time she finished talking. Almost panting, like the effort to finally talk, took everything from her. She even tilted a little, leaning against my shoulder. But when she realized what she was doing, she jerked away. Sorry, I didn't mean to lay that all on you. I smiled and reached for her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. Then letting it go. We all need to unburden once in a while, Leah. I am just glad you trusted me enough to share it with me. Her face went a little tense. I guess sometimes talking to someone whose opinion doesn't matter is a bit lethargic. I don't have to worry about disappointing you, so I can be a bit more honest than normal. We sat quietly for a few moments, just watching the crowd, when a young boy, also in traditional garb, came running to the bench. Dad is looking for you, Leah. He sent both me and Mom out to find you. He looked questioningly at me. The young boy looked to be about 13 or 14, it was hard to tell. The features he shared with Leah were obvious, so I knew that he was Leah's brother Seth. I remembered talking about him with Harry. Harry was trying to come up with ways to get Seth out of the house and off the video games so he could learn to enjoy nature. My recommendation had been to spend time on the games with him and then guilt him into spending time outside doing father-son stuff. Is this your new boyfriend? He looks like more fun than the last one. Leah swatted the back of his head with her open hand. Beat it, brat. Tell Dad I'll be right there. Leah watched her brother run off with a fond smile on her face. Stupid brat. Well, I will see you around, Thomas. Thanks for listening. She began to walk off, but stopped and turned back to me. You should change colognes to something less sweet, it would fit you better, I think. You would smell better with an earthy smell, woodsy, if you know what I mean. I just smiled at her and discreetly put my phone back in my pocket. It was a good picture. Chapter 108, Trail Etiquette. An. Sorry for no release last week everyone. I was struggling with this and the next chapter and thought about holding it for a week to rewrite it when I was contacted for an in-person job interview in Glenpool, OK. Long story short, the interview took longer than expected and I wasn't in the mind frame to write much. Just found out yesterday that despite everything, I did not get the job, so at least I'm not here telling you all about a planned move. So, my job search continues. Hope my current job lasts long enough to find my next. Without further crying on my part, enjoy today's chapter. Wearily placing one foot in front of the other, I continued climbing what I thought might possibly, maybe be a trail, kind of. Well, it looked a little more worn down than the rest of the damn mountain. For the 100th time, my mind flashed over the last few days. 26 hours of flight time, counting the plane switches, followed by a 9-hour bus ride. Those 9 hours were spent on a bus that was at full capacity with 30 people, and I stopped counting after the 60th person squeezed in after Rohan and I got our seats. It was easy to count them as they got on the bus, because everyone stopped as their eyes were drawn to me by my size and skin coloration. The language of the land was Hindi and a multitude of other local dialects. But I still got the gist of how to say, he is huge/a monster, in most all the local languages now. I couldn't really blame them, as apparently the average height for a male in Nepal was 5 feet 4 in, putting Rohan just at the norm. I however, was at 6 feet 8 in now and hoped it was where I would stay. Add to that, my last weigh-in was 310 pounds. I definitely stood out here. Maybe that's what helped keep me calm in the crowd. No reason to panic when you looked like the PE teacher in elementary school, taking the kids outside for recess. All the staring and muttering was a bit embarrassing, and I hoped that after a couple of hours, they would get over it and stop treating me like some stick of dynamite waiting to go off. They didn't. The looks and whispers lasted the entire 9 hours, and still followed as me and Rohan got off the bus. As my mind wandered, my right hand reflexively moved to my chest. Since Edythe had given me my mother's necklace, after she discovered that it had been made and was in the memorial for the Denver Mall shooting victims, I had formed the habit of running my thumb over the face of it. However, this time my hand stopped in the middle of the movement. The necklace wasn't there any longer. With my constant fear of shifting and losing or damaging it, I found the perfect place to leave it. I had taken it to a jeweler in Port Angeles and had the back engraved with a new message. It read, "With you, Edythe. I leave a piece of my heart. Thomas," and then I had made it my birthday gift for Edythe. Leaving a part of myself with her helped ease my guilt about leaving her for the summer. Something else I realized when I was at the jeweler's was that Edythe's birthstone was the same as my mother's. A poster on the wall provided customers with the stones that represented their birthday, both traditional stones and newer versions. Thinking of Edythe, my mind ran over my decision to leave Charlie's house before going on my trip to Nepal. The feeling of freedom was all I had hoped for, but it did present a bit of a problem between Edythe and myself. The night before her birthday, she had her mind set that we would consummate our relationship. I won't pretend to know everything that was going through her mind, but despite her actions, I could feel that she was pushing it because of the upcoming separation. It had taken all my willpower and pulling in a bit of fire to keep her from pushing things too far. But in the end, I knew she was happy I convinced her to wait. I would never admit to just how close I had come to letting it happen. In the end, it was the fact that I wanted our relationship to last that pushed me to stop her. The trail I was following led me around a bend and straight to a flat spot where a group of men were sitting. It looked like they were resting after walking the trail or waiting for something. Or someone, I thought darkly. Rohan had left me this morning, saying the last part of the trip I had to take on my own. Finding Jiva's home for the first time at my age had to be done alone. The way they were spread out on the clearing meant I had to weave between them to pass. It irritated me a bit, but as I was new to the area, I let it go and kept moving. All dialogue will be in Hindi from here on. Well, that was rude, Gora. Wow, someone was named Gora in that group? I thought that was a word for white in a derogatory sense. Well, the speaker was right, they were rude for blocking the trail that way. I shook my head and continued on. Until I felt a small rock hit me in the back. Can you not speak Nepali, Gora? I paused and looked over my shoulder at the men. One was now standing and had a golf ball-sized rock bouncing in his hand, and the others were smiling in an irritating way. It took me back to when I was in Phoenix and surrounded by a group of punks whose leader wanted to prove he could beat up someone so much bigger than himself. When you said something about being rude, I assumed you were talking to one of your group for blocking the trail. As I have clearly not been rude to a bunch of mannerless vagabonds that have no hiking etiquette, I am sure you can understand my confusion. The group turned red at my words. Trail etiquette here in Nepal was very important, according to Rohan. One of the men sitting said, "You sure have a big mouth on you, outsider." I smiled, "Well, I am a big man, little one. So, it's no surprise." The man jumped up from his seated position, with the other two following his action. "You were the rude one for not speaking to us as you passed. Foreigner." I turned to completely face them and walked back to the clearing. This was clearly a setup. The question was, why? I looked at the four men and focused on the one who had the rock in his hand, ignoring the one I had traded insults with. "You are obviously here for a reason. Should I assume you were waiting for me?" His black eyes showed surprise. "What makes you think that?" I made a show of looking around them. "Well, you have nothing with you, so you aren't headed to town, no packs at all, so you most likely don't plan to be here during the night. And most of all, you are obviously trying to pick a fight with me. A stranger who is only here to learn of his family history. So, shall we get started? I still have to find the village." My directness seemed to surprise them, and the one I had traded insults with seemed to have the shortest temper. He was the first to charge at me, fists raised. Relying on only my base strength and speed, I waited until he entered my reach and swung a backhand that seemed to catch him by surprise. I wasn't sure what he was thinking when my blow landed, but he didn't think it for long as he collapsed to the ground, out cold. The rock thrower decided he wanted to be my next target as he threw the rock in his hand directly at my face. I quickly dodged it and moved into striking range. His throwing the rock irritated me, so when I had an opening, I grabbed him by the neck with my left hand and delivered an overhand right to his face, and then another one. When I let him go, he too crumpled to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. The remaining two were looking at each other, and I couldn't tell if they were asking what the hell happened or checking if the other guy was going first. Choosing one at random, jumped forward and delivered a Superman punch that left my standing opponents to just one man, who was backing away with his hands up and held open. It had been so long since I fought against someone normal that I may have gone a little overboard. But I was feeling anxious being in a new land and was carrying a bit of a chip on my shoulder. Otherwise, I may have tried to talk them down a little more, instead of pushing the fight. Oh well. I dismissed the last man, turned my back to the group, and continued walking. Rohan said I should reach the village around sundown, and it was only noon. Chapter 109, Yak. About 30 minutes of walking after my encounter with the 4 men, my mind began to wander again. Once we got off the bus at Subrubasi, I mistakenly believed it to be Langtang at first. Rohan was quick to laugh at me when I asked if this was it. This is just another stop, Thomas. Most people that come this way, take 2 to 3 days of following that trail to get to Langtang. We will be there tomorrow before dark. The next day we will head further into the mountains. Jiva's home is several days' travel further in, away from human habitation. What followed was a forced march, that was only slowed to slightly faster than normal pace when we were in view of people. To fill the time, I asked about the tribe and clans, wanting to get as much information as I could. The most relevant clans are the yak, horse, bird, fox, bear, and cat clans. In each clan, there are sub-clans. The yak clan has bull, sheep, and deer members. The horse clan claims to be many, but their features are remarkably similar. The bird clan has representatives of the crane, golden eagle, raven, and albatross clans last they reported. The fox clan has the Tibetan fox, red fox, and Corsac fox. The bear clan have grizzly, Asian black, and brown bears. Finally, there is your clan. The cat clan, there are snow leopards, panthers, lions, and finally tigers. He paused here, letting the information overload settle before continuing. Each major clan selects its own leader however they chose, and then those leaders select a tribal leader amongst themselves. Anytime there is a change in leadership of a clan, there could be a request for a change in the tribal leader, thought that is usually rare. I thought for a moment and asked, what about lifespan? We tend to live longer than the most locals, averaging around 110 years. So, your shift does not prolong your lives. There was surprise in my voice. The Quileute had documented stories of their gift giving longer lifespan to those that shifted often. Wait a minute, that reminded me. Also, what clan did my grandmother belong to? Was there one created for wolves when she was here? To answer your first question. No, the ability to change form does not add to our lifespan. I wanted to interrupt, because that answer led to a lot more questions. But I let him continue. Getting answers was the whole reason I was here. I didn't need them all the first week. Your second question, the answer is no. There is no wolf clan here. She married a member of the cat clan who had his changeling abilities bound. But because of her abilities, she stayed in Jiva's home with her husband. You know that's going to take some explaining, Rohan. Rohan sighed, it's like explaining the basics you learn as a child to an adult. There is so much I just feel is basic that I forget to tell you. Okay, obviously, the whole population does not live in one spot. The clans are spread out all over Nepal and some surrounding areas. Those members who awaken the changing abilities gather in Jiva's home. Your grandfather was a tiger member who wanted to go out into the world, so he had his ability bound. It was on a trade expedition that he met your grandmother, and she claimed an imprint on him. We of the tribe had never heard of this imprint, but accepted it all the same. After all, each clan has its own idiosyncrasies. My big take from that is there is a good chance that I will not imprint. I couldn't wait to tell Edythe about that. Rohan continued, to be bound, you must come to Jiva's home and undergo a ceremony that blocks you from changing. This can only be done between the ages of 24 to 25, and must be voluntary. However, no system is perfect, and some do slip through the cracks, thus you have all the stories of Yeti or Bigfoot, the Skinwalkers, and many other myths. My train of thought was interrupted by a rather large problem. On the trail ahead of me, standing about 6 feet at the shoulder and looking to weigh about 2,000 pounds, was a solid black bull yak. Its belly fur hanging nearly to the ground, it looked at me evenly. There was no fear in its eyes or even wariness. It just looked at me as if waiting to see my own reaction. I looked around to see if there was a way around it and came up empty. My left shoulder was at a steep incline that offered little purchase to climb up it, and looking to my right was a gradual slope down the mountain. This was the worst possible place for this to happen. I let out a deep sigh. I really didn't want to change to my tiger shape just to get around a damn yak. The fact that it was here and just standing still made me think of the 4 idiots back at the clearing. I laughed at the thought of how many training arc cartoon and comic stories started this way. The wandering hero heads to the great master's training palace only to be met with multiple tests along the way. Boring. All right, yak. I am headed that way, and you are in the way. I will walk past you and be on my way, or you push your luck, and I find out if you got your name from the flavor of your meat. The trail was big enough for 2 yaks to pass each other, so my passing it without causing it any distress was doable. It seemed to watch me as I got closer to it, showing no signs of fear or aggression. Having only seen cows on TV or in pictures, the only real differences I could see were the obvious ones. The hump on its shoulders, its short snout, and definitely its long hair. A normal animal was no threat to me, so I calmly moved to walk past it. The yak made no move as I approached. I hoped my confident pace would keep it from getting skittish. The thing didn't look like a wild yak, just a clean domestic one that had wandered onto the trail. I walked along the shoulder of the trail, hoping to pass with no incident, but I kept a wary eye on the longhorns the closer I got. It was a good thing I did as well, because the damn yak swung its head as I was about out of range. Instead of moving forward, giving the yak more opportunity to attack me from behind, I stepped back, placing my body between the dubious safety of the 2 horns. Out of reflex, my hand reached out and smacked the snout of the yak. Hard. The smack forced the head down and in surprise, the yak stumbled back a few steps. I knew that the nose was a sensitive spot for all bovine species, and that was why in the old times people placed rings in the bull's nose to control them. You could have just let me pass. I was no threat to you, so your actions have made this necessary. So now it's your turn to choose what to do. You tried to gore me and got slapped for it, and that was me being nice. Talking to the damn thing was probably a little crazy, but I was used to having company on this trip, so my thoughts spilled out of my mouth. It wasn't like I was looking for a conversation. Just talking and hoping my voice would carry my intent. It didn't work. Even with the little animal experience I had, Bugs Bunny taught me enough about what it meant when something with ore starts to paw at the ground and lower its head. You really don't want to do that. I said out loud, hoping this didn't get any worse, but when it started to tense up like it was going to jump at me or charge, I started to pull in the heat from my mental fire. With a bellow from its mouth, the yak went into full charge mode, well as much as a charge as it could get on this trail. I reached out and placed a hand on each horn, getting a solid grip, then I twisted my body. With my increased strength, this caused the back end of the yak to whip around, and a twist of its head had the stupid thing tumbling down the slope of the mountain, once I let the horns go. I watched as it made a few tumbles and came to rest about 60 yards away. It laid on its side, obviously dazed. Not wanting to be in sight when it got its focus back, I made my way along the trail, but kept an ear out for anything running after me from the back. That was kind of fun. Chapter 110, Trail's End. The next couple of hours were just a boring trudge of one foot in front of the other. As the sun started to set, I had to shade my eyes as I was walking directly towards it. After a short uphill climb, I looked further down the trail only to see the sun shining its last rays onto a collection of stone buildings that looked to be a part of the mountain base. There was an old stone wall that time had eroded to barely over 5 feet tall in places. It was in the shape of a half-moon that connected into the mountain face, giving the whole village the look of being crafted from the mountain itself. At the center of the village and visible from even this far out was a building I recognized as a pagoda with 7 levels. It looked ancient but well kept. The trail I was currently on led directly to the gates of the walled village. There I could make out 2 figures, one on either side of the gate. As I closed the distance, the figures by the gate came into focus. Both were dressed plainly, their clothes sturdy and well-worn rather than ceremonial. Each stood their post, though neither gave the impression of being on edge. They simply watched me approach, their expressions unreadable in the dimming light. When I reached a few paces from the gate, one of them shifted his weight and pushed it open with a steady hand. The hinges gave a low groan that echoed briefly against the stone wall. Neither guard spoke, nor did they move to block my path. Instead, they stepped aside with the same quiet reserve, as if my arrival were expected but unremarkable. Beyond the gate, the village spread inward with narrow stone lanes that curved gently between low buildings. The place seemed calm, almost ordinary, yet something about the silence of its welcome made me hesitate on the threshold, unsure whether I was intruding or being silently invited in. The two guards watched me with the patience of stone, and I realized silence might be their preferred greeting. "Fine by me." I nodded once, as if acknowledging some unspoken challenge, and stepped through the gate. Narrow lanes twisted between squat stone homes, each capped with roofs of slate that gleamed dully in the fading light. Smoke curled from vents in the walls, carrying the scent of wood and something savory that made my stomach remind me I hadn't eaten since before the yak incident. No one rushed to greet me. No curious children, no cautious elders peeking from windows. The village wasn't abandoned, it breathed. I could feel that, but it was watching me in the way of mountains and predators, calm and eternal, waiting to see if I would falter first. Deciding if I was prey or predator. The path I walked led straight toward the pagoda. Up close, it was even more impressive, 7 tiers of sweeping roofs that seemed to balance one atop another like stacked blades. Every beam and carving was maintained with reverence, not shine. This wasn't a tourist attraction, it was a living heart. As I approached the courtyard surrounding the pagoda, a figure appeared in its doors. Not a guard this time, nor a ragged traveler. This man, or maybe he was closer to presence than man, wore plain robes the color of ash and moved with a deliberate calm, as though each step were weighed against eternity. His hair was orange with black streaks, and his back straight, and when his eyes found mine, I stopped walking without meaning to. The robed man stepped out of the pagoda doorway like a shadow cast by the mountain itself. His eyes locked on me immediately, not curious, not welcoming, but sharp, cutting, as though I were a blemish on the courtyard. The robed man's gaze cut through me like a blade. His steps were slow, deliberate, but each one echoed with authority. When he stopped a few paces away, he did not offer a greeting, nor a name. He simply looked me over the breadth of my shoulders, the pale strangeness of my hair, the faint shimmer of fire I carried inside my mind. "You look nothing like us. You carry too much of your mother's people, pale skin, foreign tongue, Western arrogance in your posture." He circled me once, slow, deliberate. "And yet you burn with our fire. That makes you dangerous." I clenched my fists but forced my voice steady. "I didn't ask Rohan to come find me. I didn't ask for this fire either. But it's in me. Denying it won't make it go away." The man stopped in front of me, inches away, his gaze drilling into mine. "You think you can just claim this blood, that you belong here because the fire inside you roars too loud for your mother's soft world to contain?" His lip curled. "You are not of us. Not yet." The weight of his disdain pressed down on me harder than the mountain air. My fists clenched reflexively, though I forced myself to keep my voice steady. "I came because Rohan said I had family here. Because my father's blood runs in me." Then I looked at him with true anger in my eyes. He said if I didn't come, then you would come for me and mine. To kill me or die trying. The man's eyes narrowed, but I saw the flicker there, not surprise, but satisfaction, like I'd spoken the truth he'd been waiting to hear. "So, Rohan told you," he said at last, his voice quiet but edged like a knife. "Good. Then you understand this was never a choice. The fire cannot be allowed to wander wild in foreign lands, mingling with soft blood. It would shame us. It would endanger us. So yes. His gaze burned into mine, unflinching. If you had refused, we would have come. And if you had resisted, you would already be ash on the wind. I gave a feral grin, or you would be short many of your clan members. How many would I have to kill before you realized I was not worth the cost? That earned the faintest twist of his mouth, not approval, not kindness, but something harder. A grudging acknowledgement that I hadn't folded under his threat. For a moment, the courtyard went utterly still. Even the smoke from the incense braziers seemed to pause, caught between rising and falling. Then the man gave a low, humorless chuckle. So the cub bears its fangs. He leaned closer, his eyes glinting with something predatory. Good. I would rather test an arrogant beast than a whimpering cub. His tone hardened again, every syllable a strike. But do not mistake your fire for strength. Rage is wild. It burns brightest before it dies. Tomorrow, we will see if you are a flame that endures, or only a spark that vanishes in the wind. He turned sharply, addressing the shadows without looking at them. Give him a place to rest. No honors, no offerings. If he survives the trial of breath, he may earn such things. If he fails. He finally glanced back at me, the faintest curl at the corner of his lip. Then at least his fire will warm the mountain for one more night. Rohan stepped from the shadows and made a follow-me gesture. I cast one last look toward the pagoda. The man was already walking back into its shadows, his presence swallowing the courtyard whole. But in that brief flicker before the doors closed, I could swear when he turned to give me one last glance, I saw something in his eyes, not hatred, not contempt. Something sharper. Calculation. They hadn't brought me here to welcome me home. They'd brought me here to break me, or forge me. And either way, tomorrow was going to decide which. Rohan led me from the courtyard without a word. After a quiet walk, he stopped at a squat building near the edge of the village. Its door was plain wood, worn smooth by years of mountain winds. He pushed the door open, gestured for me to enter, and closed it behind himself after following me inside. Inside, the room was small, a low bed rolled against the wall, a table with an empty bowl, and nothing else. No lanterns, no candles. Just the faint glow of the rising moon filtering through a single slit of a window. I dropped onto the bed with a grunt. Rohan remained standing, his back to the door, arms folded. The silence stretched until I finally snapped. You could have warned me, I said. His head tilted slightly, but he didn't turn. I did warn you. I told you they would not welcome you. That's not what I mean. My fists clenched. You told me they'd come for me if I didn't. That's not the same as telling me they'd look me in the eye and call me a mistake. Their opinion of you is the least of your worries. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. The trial of breath is not a ceremony. It is not a theater. It is the mountain itself. You will climb higher than you think you can breathe. You will carry weight until your bones feel like sand. And when your lungs fail, when your vision goes black, that is when the fire inside you will either awaken fully, or consume you. There is no middle. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. Rohan studied me for a long moment, his jaw tight. They expect you to fail. Some of them hope you do. It would be easier. Easier. I spat. For who? For them. For me. For you. His eyes narrowed. Failure is clean. Death leaves no questions. Survival. He shook his head. Survival makes you dangerous. To them, and to yourself. For a moment, we just stared at each other in the dim room, the weight of his words pressing between us. Finally, I leaned back on the bed, forcing my voice steady. Then I guess tomorrow we find out if I'm a mistake, or something worse. Chapter 111, Ceremony Start. Morning found me staring at the ceiling. My mind adding up the time in forks. Should I call and tell Edythe that I made it? No, I really wouldn't have anything to tell her. I robotically brought the bland granola bar to my mouth and finished it off. What I wouldn't give for a ribeye pancake sandwich right now. My loving clansman must have forgotten to bring me my dinner last night. A sharp knock sounded a moment before Rohan entered. Good, you are up. He tossed a bundle of cloth at me. Put these on, it's all you will wear when you start your climb. We don't have much time, the ceremony starts as the sun rises. I stood and shook the bundle out to find it was a grey robe. Shrugging my shoulders, I started to take my clothes off and put the robe on. Tell me about this test I'll be taking. The robe was scratchy against my skin, and it smelled of smoke, like it had been stored near a chimney or something. Rohan took the same stance as last night, near the door, arms crossed. You'll carry the flame, he said flatly. A brazier bound to your fire. You climb until the mountain decides whether you're one of us, or whether it takes you. That's vague, I muttered, tugging the hem into place. What happens if I fall? Or the fire goes out? He didn't blink. Then you fail. Fail as in go back to the beginning and try again, or fail as in you die. The words hit me, and anger filled my mind. This wasn't what you told me, Rohan. I would have stood a better chance staying with the Cullens and fighting anything that came at me. I am starting from a place of weakness here, and you brought me. What's to stop me from shifting right now and fighting my way out? I came here to learn control, to learn about my father's family. Not be ambushed with some life or death test my first day here. Rohan's expression hardened, but there was a flicker in his eyes, quick as lightning. Not guilt, something closer to urgency. You want to fight your way out? Then shift. Do it now. Break out of this room, tear through me, try to run. The mountain will swallow you before you make it a mile. And the fire inside you. He shook his head once. It doesn't care if you think you're ready. It doesn't care about Edythe. It will consume you, and when it does, she'll be the one to pay. You talk like I don't have any control over my shifting. It has never been a danger to anyone who didn't attack me. I can control it enough to fight with Jasper and not hurt him. What aren't you telling me? Rohan gave a deep sigh. If a member of this tribe that has the fire doesn't have themselves bound before 25 and does not complete the trial, they go mad, the instincts of the beast take over. No matter the form. I answered back, but that doesn't happen to the Quileute, and I have their blood. What makes you think I will be affected by it? Rohan raised his voice for the first time since I have met him, because you are not a wolf. But a tiger. Yes, part of the Quileute gift is now in your blood, but the tiger blood is still dominant. Your size is nothing like I have seen before, but we have forms you have not begun to understand. He took a calming breath. Your transformation, or shift as you call it, happened years before it should have. It is true that we don't know why, nothing like this happened to your father or his brother. No one else has the blood of the Quileute in them, so we don't fully know what will happen to you. So, it was decided that you would take the test early. He thrust a hand toward the door, abrupt again. Come. The sun won't wait for you. I stood there for a moment, fists tight at my sides, trying to process what he'd just dropped on me. A countdown to madness. Bound before 25 or risk losing everything including myself. And seeing as I had shifted before my 18th birthday, I was willing to bet that binding wasn't an option any longer. Not that I would allow that to happen anyway. My tiger shape is a part of me, its strength is what gives me some hope of equality with Edythe. The feeling I have when running through the woods and forks, the connection to the world I feel. No. No one was taking any of that from me. I forced out a laugh, sharp and bitter. So, this is it. March me up the mountain, hope I don't burn out, and call it a tradition? Hell of a family reunion. My own words caused my anger to flare, but under it there was something else clawing at me. Fear. Not for me. For Edythe, for Bella, for the Cullens who had treated me like family from day one. I thought of Rosalie, well, almost everyone. If Rohan was right, if there was even a chance he was right, I couldn't afford to walk away. I pulled the robe tighter around me and met his gaze. Fine. Show me where this test begins. Rohan didn't smile, didn't nod, just turned on his heel and led the way out. I followed, the robe rough against my skin. The morning air moved the unfamiliar robe to wrap around my legs. Any chill it carried with it unable to make me shiver due to my internal temperature. The narrow lanes I'd wandered through last night were still mostly empty. Occasionally I would pass a man or woman, but no children. They all looked at me in surprise, their eyes followed me as Rohan and I passed, but no one spoke. Not a whisper, not a cough. Just the weight of their stares pressing against my back. Once we made our way back to the courtyard of the pagoda, I saw a group of robed figures sitting in a circle around a large black brazier. As it sat on the ground, I took its measurements mentally. It looked about 2 feet tall and maybe 2½ feet wide, with handles on either side of the round monstrosity. Looking closer, I could see many animal shapes carved into it, looking like etchings that were just slightly off color compared to the rest of the dark metal it was made from. As I inspected the large brazier, I heard the door of the pagoda open and turned my attention to the figure that emerged. It was the same man as last night. He still had a presence around him that was almost stifling. His orange and black hair was hard to make out in the pre-dawn light. His physical size was only a few inches shorter than mine, but my bulk overwhelmed his slim build. He broke the silence. Who are you, and by what right do you seek to climb the mountain and claim the gift of the clan? His words sounded ceremonial, but since I hadn't been prompted about what to say by Rohan, I would answer in my own way. I am Thomas Naresh Raizel, brought here to undergo this test. I am here to learn of the gift my blood gives me. I come with no clan, so I will claim none. My words made many in the circle mutter amongst themselves, but I ignored them. No clan claimed me when my father died, or helped my mother when she was raising me on her own, so fuck them. It takes more than blood to make a family, just ask any foster or stepkid and they will tell you the same. The tribal leader, well, that's who I assume he is, looks offended by my answer. His eyes narrow and I see his pupils go from the normal round to a more slit shape and the whites of his eyes start to turn a dark yellow. He lets out a growling breath, so I tense up the sudden thickness in the air. He took another breath. You will carry this brazier up the mountain. As soon as you touch it, your fire will be drawn out of your mind and become its container. If you attempt to draw on it while it is in the brazier, you will fail. If you take both hands off the brazier, you will fail. I looked at the brazier again. Its size suggested around 700 to 800 pounds. No problem. As if guessing my thoughts, Rohan spoke just loud enough for me to hear. The brazier is special. The weakest person in the village can lift it, but it will take all their strength. The same goes for the strongest, it will take all their strength as well. The air still thick with the tension my words caused, I did the stupidest thing I had done to date. Notice I said, to date. I still have low hopes for my future actions. I walked over to the brazier and picked it up without properly setting myself. The brazier actually felt startled. Like it wasn't ready for me to pick it up yet. Maybe it was all in my head, but it's how I felt. Then the weight of the damn thing registered on my muscles, and I almost dropped it like a deadlift in surprise myself. Trying to keep the shock off my face, I adjusted my stance to help me carry the weight across my body. But then, I was hit with a feeling of emptiness. The presence of my fire that was always with me, was now gone. As if in answer of my searching mind, a white flame erupted from the brazier. Had it been a literal fire, it would have burnt my face off as it blazed like a bonfire. The flames went several feet into the air, the surroundings suddenly cold from the fire drawing all heat into itself to sustain its form. A few moments later it settled down to a consistent height of about a foot above the rim of the brazier. I looked around at the startled faces of those I could see. So, Does someone want to point out the trail or do I just guess where it starts? Chapter 112, Meet the Family. My flippant attitude caused a stir in the surrounding figures. I heard everything from outrage to suppressed chuckles coming from the hooded figures. As tempted as I was to look around at the audience to try and place who reacted in what way, I kept my eyes on the tribal leader. His expression didn't change in the least, however for a brief moment his eyes focused on me with borderline killing intent. The path begins at the western stairs, the sun at your back. You will climb until you reach the shrine of the tiger carved into the spine of the mountain. It will appear when the mountain judges you worthy of it. He stepped closer to me. The longer it takes, the less worthy you are. For a moment, our eyes lock. The contempt in his clashing with the stubborn spark in mine. He was the first to break eye contact as he turned and gestured down a path where I saw a gate opening. I turned and started walking, thinking that at least the brazier wasn't burning a dragon and tiger scar onto my forearms. Once the gate closes behind me and I could no longer feel the eyes of the village boring into my back, I readjust my stance. Carrying this brazier was awkward, and walking normal was taking more strength than it should. Now that no one is watching, I started to waddle as I moved. I reached the worn stairs just as the sun started to crest the horizon, its rays beginning to warm my back. As I started to climb the stairs, I looked closer at the brazier and the fire it contained. My mind felt hollow without the presence of this fire. I had grown so accustomed to the feeling of it, that without it my mind was constantly distracted and focusing on the weirdest things. It felt like someone scooped a part of my mind out and my psyche was trying to fill the hole with random memories and thoughts. Climbing the stairs at a steady pace, I kept my eyes focused on looking through the fire at the coming steps. After about 20 minutes, I came to a landing that was about 5x5 square. Turning my head to look for the next staircase, I saw a blurry figure being partially blocked by the flames in front of my face. Focusing on him, I begin to make out his features. He stands about 6 feet 5 and has sandy brown hair. He had a heavy build and a calm presence. His facial features were familiar in a way that reminded me of some pictures my mother had shown me when I was young. The prodigal son comes home at last. About time you paid respect to your blood, son. Unamused, I snort. The absentee father, showing up and acting like he has a right to enter my life like it's nothing. It wasn't my choice to leave Niraj, I was taken. Violently, painfully. I never would have left your mother voluntarily. My death made her life hard and yours lonely. I would give anything to have been there for you both. My throat tightened, anger and sorrow tangling in my chest until I couldn't tell one from the other. For a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. Put the brazier down and let me see you. At least give me a chance to embrace you in a hug, son. The mountain has given us this one chance to meet while you are still alive. His words confirmed without a doubt that this was a trick. My hope from my early years, the presence of my father to comfort me and teach me. There was a time, that I would have given anything to have the opportunity to feel the loving comfort of my father's arm protecting me, supporting me. But this mockery was nothing but an insult to me. My father died before I was born, and one day I will learn why. Unfortunately, no ghost in the fire can give me what I want. He was blocking the next set of stairs, so I pushed forward with the brazier slightly turned to allow the fire to burn him if he stood in my way. He faded away when the first flicker from the brazier touched him and I resumed my climb. Stair after stair, my steps seemed to take all my effort, again and again. The mind-numbing of the climb was mirrored in my thoughts as they tried to fill the place my fire belonged. The hollow void, the ache its absence caused. Random thoughts of Denver, then my time in Phoenix and the short time I had been in Forks. After what felt like hours but could have only been minutes, I came to another clearing. I paused to catch my breath and find the next set of stairs. My vision, still blurred from the flames I carried, saw a figure blocking the stairs when I finally found them. I gave a sigh as I approached. I could see at a glance who was here this time. Thomas. Hey Bells! You here to profess the secret love you always had for me? The forbidden fruit you couldn't have. Like some of those smutty books you like to read so much. She laughed, the sound was music to my ears. It sounded so real. But her words were a poison knife, cutting me open. That's just like you, Thomas. Only seeing it from your angle. I could just as easily take your words to mean that you actually have a crush on me. After all, who held you together when you fell apart in Phoenix? Who put your needs above her own to protect her dear, broken cousin? Crashing into my life and taking away time I needed with my mother. If you weren't there, then I would have been able to keep my mother's attention. She would have never remarried and forced me to go to Forks. Or should I thank you for that? For placing me in a position to have a chance at an immortal life. All I have to do is convince that broody wannabe Bruce Wayne to change me so I can be by his side forever, or until I find someone I actually want to be with. Her words slammed into me like a sledgehammer. Is this how she truly felt about me? Was I affecting her life to this extent? I shook my head. No, this isn't the Isabella I know. This is the worst version of her. But was there a kernel of truth in there somewhere? Did I take from her without thought and give nothing back? I looked at the figure in front of me. Thank you. You have given me something to think about. I have always known I owed Bella for all she did for me, but I never really thought about what I may have taken from her without realizing it. But I can only work that out with her, it's none of your business. As I had done before, I shifted the brazier to point the fire in front of myself and stepped towards the next set of stairs. My climb began again with the echoes of her wails when my fire burned her away. The climb is beginning to take its toll on me, my breath is ragged, and every step is a new level of exhaustion. The next clearing needs to come soon, even though my mind is being tortured, my legs get a bit of rest when I'm talking to whoever the mountain shows me. From out of nowhere, I feel something slam into my side, and I begin to fall forward with the brazier in my hands. In pure instinct, I slammed the bottom of the brazier on the steps, and that gives me a moment to adjust my feet and regain my balance. Looking around, I can't make out what hit me, but almost immediately I feel the blood dripping down my arm. Whatever it was, it got me good. As I stood there panting, I could feel the need to continue the climb. After looking around for any movement, I turned and began my climb once again. This time though, I keep a wary eye on my surroundings. As my climb continued, I would occasionally catch movement out of the corner of my eye and turn to look, only to see nothing more than a shrub or weed waving in the mountain breeze. Until finally I turned my head fast enough to catch a full look at what it was. It was small, well, smaller than I was used to. But there was no doubt in my mind, it was me. In my tiger shift. Chapter 113, Be Me. Sensing that it had been found, it began to move openly. Walking to the stairs below me. It crouched on the edge of the stairs. Smaller than I remembered, but still massive. Muscles rippled under striped fur, its body low, ready to spring. Sky blue eyes, ice cold, even though they reflected the flames in the brazier I carried. My tiger. Me. But not me. This version was feral, mouth open in a soundless snarl, fangs glinting. My tiger's gaze didn't hold thought or balance. It was pure hunger, pure violence, pure instinct. I watched it, how it moved, how it was ready to spring in attack, and just as ready to flee into the mountains and wait for another chance to ambush me. I was frozen on the steps, one foot on the step in front of me. I waited and watched as my pulse pounded in my ears. I turned to face it full on. The beast stood and approached me, one soft, padded step at a time. It climbed toward me, slow and deliberate, its mouth opened wide to release a growl of discontentment. It was angry at me, but I wasn't dumb enough to think it missed on its first attack. It had me dead to rights, I only lived because it allowed me to survive. Still, the blood dripping down my arm suggested it wasn't friendly. Only a few steps from my position, the tiger let out a roar that pounded into me like another physical blow. But wondrously, I could take meaning from its roar. Leave here. They have brought doubt and fear to us. I am your strength, your anger given flesh. Before this place, we were one. Now you try to separate us. Embrace me and we will leave here and return to the mate. In its voice, I could hear the rage, the pain I had fed it with all my life. I understood what it meant. After the initial fear of not being able to control myself, I had lost all my apprehension about this form. I had grown to love it and the strength and freedom it brought. But when they told me that without this ceremony, I would lose control, I began doubting my shift again. With another roar, it jumped the final few stairs between us, slamming into me and forcing me onto my back. I held the brazier to the side as my own shift looked ready to tear my throat out. But when we touched, I could feel the anger and fear of my rejection. More than that, I could also feel my love for Edythe. My care for my friends and family. This was more than just my anger, it was all my emotions, everything that made me who I am. The tiger shoved harder, roaring again, demanding I give in. My arms shook around the brazier as the flames flickered as if waiting for me to call on them. Give in. The roar shook through my bones, though it was my own voice buried inside it. Drop the burden. Be what you are meant to be. Be me. The easiest thing would have been to let go. To unleash myself and meet it tooth for tooth, claw for claw. Rage boiled in me, answering the call because rage was simple. Rage was clean. Rage made sense when the world didn't. But as the fire wavered, I felt more. Beneath the fury, there was sorrow, memories of Denver, of my mother during the good times and yes, the bad as well. There was fear of Edythe, of Bella, of losing them both. There was joy too, the wind rushing through my fur as I ran, the warmth of laughter I'd thought I'd never hear again. The joy of discovering my new strength with Jasper and even Emmett. This thing pressing me down wasn't just anger. It was everything. The tiger's jaws clamped down, its fangs stopping inches from my throat. Its eyes blazed with the same fire that flickered in the brazier, wild and desperate. You are nothing without me, it snarled. My arms trembled, I pulled the brazier closer to us, its heat washing over both man and beast. No, I gasped. I am nothing without all of me. You're not my enemy. You're me. My fear, my rage, my love. My fire isn't just anger, it's everything I've carried. At my words, I felt the tiger relax and its weight begin to lift. I felt just for a moment, the tiger's heart and mine beat in rhythm, then just my own heart hammering inside my chest. Its beat was gone, but not gone. It was in me, and I was whole. The tiger began to join the fire in the brazier. Not burnt away like the visions of my father and Bella, but added to what it was that I was carrying. The fire felt hotter, but more under control. It was hard to describe. I lay there trying to take in all that had happened, but the drive to climb was back, forcing me back to my feet. Once I was standing, I began my climb again. I spoke out loud to the mountain, what's next? The ghost of Thomas' future? Figures. Bah, humbug. More boring trudge. One foot after the other. Seems like that's all I have been doing since I left Forks. My arm and back muscles spasm under the weight of the brazier. My legs felt like they were on fire one moment and numb the next. I was focused on my legs, numb when I lifted it to the next step, then fire when I put my weight on it to move forward. Again and again, it seemed endless to me. Finally, I came to another landing, but this one was more. A massive tiger carved from the stone of the mountain and polished either by the wind or by hand until it gleamed. It gave off the feeling of eternal majesty as it looked over the clearing, watching over the village below. The wind circled the half-cave, half-clearing, giving the impression that the tiger was breathing, and the fire in my brazier was being drawn towards its mouth, as if it wanted to devour it. The brazier itself felt like it belonged here, it felt as though it was pulling me to place it in the giant tiger's mouth. I felt relieved to be almost done with the test. I needed food and rest, both in large quantities. But then a voice broke through the silence. Thomas. It cut through the tired fog in my brain, clear, familiar, intimate. I turned to see her standing next to the wall of the cave. She was more beautiful than I remembered. Moon-pale skin that glowed in front of the shadowed cave wall. Her copper hair rustling gently like the wind was just playing with it. I nearly dropped the brazier in reflex, to empty my arms so I could embrace her. Thomas, she said again, softer this time. She reached her hand out for mine. You don't have to do this. Put it down and come home to me. Being without you is torture for me. I can't even dream of you. I will forgive you for leaving, but only if you come back right away. Edythe. What are? How? No, you're not here. You are not her. She smiled, but her eyes and face conveyed sadness at my reaction to her appearance. Aren't I? Look at me, Thomas. You have carried this weight since the moment you abandoned me. But you don't have to, Thomas. This fire you are carrying. It's not who I first met, not who I first fell for. You don't need it to be with me. Look at what it has done to us already, forcing us apart like this. She took a step towards me, her hand reaching for mine. Even with this little fire, you aren't strong enough to truly be with me. Just leave it here and come home. I can change you, make you like me. So we would be equals, like we should be. Together forever. The ache in my chest forced me to my knees, and tears streamed down my face. She was right, wasn't she? All I had to do was let go of the brazier and go home. I wanted nothing more than to do just that, let go of everything and just be with her, forever. Her words had sliced deeper than any roar from my shifter side or fear of what I stole from Bella. Even meeting my father for the only time in my life didn't impact me like a few words from Edythe. Even if I kept this fire, was I strong enough to keep Edythe at my side? My fire in the brazier flared higher, cutting off my view of Edythe for just a moment. I had almost given up. Almost. I got up off my knees and stood tall, brazier still firm in my grip. Despite what this vision of Edythe said, the fire had been a part of me when she first met me. It had always been a part of me. Giving that up so I could become a vampire isn't something I had ever thought about. If I returned to Edythe with any part of me missing, it wouldn't be me that returned, but a shell of me. When this realization hit me, another memory filtered through my mind. No, not just a memory but many. Or perhaps it was a piece of a dream, a truth of who I am. The pounding of paws on wet earth, the surge of power as I ran free through forks. The tiger's heartbeat in rhythm with my own. My mother's arms around me as a child, Bella's stubborn loyalty when I broke, Jasper's steady grin when he taught me to stand my ground. Edythe's look of fear when she showed me herself under the sunlight. All of it. My rage, my fear, my love, my joy. If I gave this fire away to the shrine or to her, I'd be giving all of them away too. No. My knuckles whitened as I held the brazier closer. I looked at the tiger statue, then I turned to the vision of Edythe. My final look was at the fire in the brazier. White and flickering, fragile, yet furious all at once. I won't give this fire up. Not to the mountain, not to you. The real Edythe knows that the fire is a part of me, and she wants all of me, not just pieces of me. With a twist of my wrists, the brazier was turned towards me. The fire licking my chest and face, but it didn't burn, it sank into me. It roared through me, searing past skin and bone until it filled the hollowness inside, I hadn't realized was there. My knees nearly buckled under the weight of it, but I refused to fall. The shrine shuddered, the carved tiger's stone eyes igniting with a pale light. The cavern wind howled, pulling at the fire like greedy hands trying to drag it away, trying to claim the fire as its own. I clenched my teeth and roared back at it. My voice mixed with the fire, the sound splitting the clearing as though it came from both man and tiger. It's mine. The vision of Edythe flickered in the gale, her hand outstretched, her eyes wide with pain. For a heartbeat I wanted to reach for her, wanted to believe. But as the fire surged into me, I knew. That wasn't her. My Edythe wouldn't demand pieces of me. She'd fight to have all of me, even the parts I hated. The flames poured into me, and when the brazier was empty, I let it go. It tumbled with a loud clang and rolled to the feet of the tiger statue, cold. When the wind died, silence hit harder than the storm. The shrine's eyes dimmed. The vision was gone. And I was still standing. I pressed a hand against my chest, where the heat still pulsed steady, fierce, alive. I am whole, I whispered into the quiet. The mountain gave no answer. But for the first time since I began the climb, I didn't need one. I have taken a bit of a different tone lately. I am blaming it on Thomas being out of sorts, being on his own for the first time. But it most likely is because or real-world issues. Let me know what you think. I find it a little robotic at points, like I'm writing what I think I should, not where the flow of the story takes me. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks. Chapter 114, Girls Talk. Leah POV. Yet again, I stormed through the woods, the only place that gave me even a shred of peace these days. The air was still moist from the latest rainstorm, the ground was soft and slippery enough that I had to watch my step. It's hard to do a proper stomp if the ground doesn't give you the sound of a solid impact. I knew I'd have to apologize to Seth yet again once I got my anger under control. Trying to do it now would only backfire. He'd just hit his teenage years, and his newfound love of sarcasm got under my skin more than I liked to admit. The kid didn't deserve all of my bite, but I couldn't help it. That should be my new mantra, I can't help any of it. The anger was always there, clinging to me, like an exposed nerve. It wasn't just about Seth. It wasn't just about Sam, either, though thinking his name made my stomach twist. No, it was bigger. Older. Heavier. I'd wake up angry, go to bed angry, and in between, I'd snap at everyone who dared breathe too close. The only time the anger faded even a little was when I talked with Thomas at the powwow all those months ago. More than likely though, it was immersing myself in the heritage of the tribe. There is an idea, I can find some materials and make a dream catcher. Better sleep would be nice, all I do in my dreams anymore is run. Maybe I was a track star in my past life, if I believed in that crap anyway. I paused and looked around, taking in my surroundings. I hadn't been paying attention to where I was going, as long as I was moving. Taking in a deep breath, I let it out and tried to center myself. There was a sweet smell in the air. I breathed in another lungful through my nose, it reminded me of Thomas again. That sugary cologne I smelled on him at the powwow, it didn't smell bad. It just smelled like it didn't belong. Following the scent, I came to a small clearing with a somewhat flat rock in it. The area seemed well worn by hikers. A gust of wind blew through the trees, bringing the sound of cloth dragging against tree bark. What surprised me was that the sound came from up in a nearby tree. Looking closer, I saw what appeared to be a backpack hung on a branch. How weird. I frowned. No one in their right mind would just toss a perfectly good pack up into a tree. Hikers around here were sloppy sometimes, sure, but not that sloppy. It had to be there intentionally. I stepped closer, craning my neck. The pack swayed in the breeze, whatever it held wasn't heavy, but the bulge showed there was something in it. Clothes maybe? I thought to myself. The breeze hit me again, this time from a different angle. Suddenly, the sugary scent grew stronger, so strong my throat tightened. Thomas! I muttered before I could stop myself, heat rushing to my cheeks at how pathetic it sounded. That's not who you're smelling. The voice froze me where I stood. Low, calm, too smooth. It didn't come from the trees or down the trail. It came from right behind me. I whipped around, my heart slamming into my ribs, and nearly stumbled backward. She stood there, perfectly still, like she'd been part of the clearing all along. Copper hair catching slivers of dull light, skin pale like polished stone. Golden eyes watching me, sharp but not unkind. I had never seen her before, but I knew her immediately. Edythe Cullen. I swallowed hard, fists clenching automatically at my sides. My mom's warnings, the elders' instructions, even Dad's muttered words all crashed through me at once. Stay away from the Cullens. You shouldn't be out here alone, she said softly, almost like it was a kindness. I barked out a laugh I didn't feel. And you should? Newsflash, Cullen, this isn't your forest. Her gaze didn't flicker. It isn't your side of the river either. The words slid under my skin, barbed and quiet. I hated how steady her voice was, how unbothered she looked. Like she knew something I didn't. Like she was holding it over me. That smell twisted in my chest again. Thomas. Or something that clung to him, at least. I bit down the lump rising in my throat. Why do you smell like him? I blurted before I could stop myself. Something flickered across her perfect face, too quick to catch. Then her expression smoothed again, calm as ever. Because he's important to me. Her answer was simple. Too simple. And it made my stomach twist in ways I didn't want to name. Anger started to build now that surprise had passed. I pulled back on it as much as I could. There was nothing to worry about, just some stupid stories. I was still wary though, watching her every move. If he is important, why isn't he with you or you with him? Something flickered in her eyes, then something sharp, but it was gone before I could pin it down. Her face stayed unreadable, and that only made me angrier. She glanced to my side at the rock in the clearing. He came here to clear his head sometimes. It's one of the last places in the area that I can still feel connected to him. Loneliness takes on a whole new feeling once you have tasted real happiness. But I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Am I, Miss Clearwater? Her eyes returned to my face, and for one breathless second, I felt like she could see straight through me, like she knew what was twisting in my chest, the things I'd never admit even to myself. I broke her gaze, jaw tight. You don't know me. No, she agreed softly, but I know Thomas. And he has spoken of you. That caught me off guard, and I hated how my pulse jumped at the sound of his name in her mouth. I wanted to snap back, tell her she had no right, but the words tangled up inside me. I shifted my weight and crossed my arms tight over my chest, trying to keep the anger down, contained. But some slipped through. Oh yeah, and what does he know about me? Edythe smiled, no smirked. He knows you have had a raw deal. Other people making decisions that have affected you have made you doubt yourself. But he is confident that you will come out stronger than even you know, and now I see why he thinks that way. Fierce, loyal, but a bit lost right now. At her words, I envisioned the times I had seen Thomas. The cliffs when he was worried because he heard me screaming. God, what a bitch I was to him. Then at the beach, where I got to apologize, until Sam showed up and I ran like a coward. Next, at the hospital parking lot, where he knew enough to tell me what I needed to know. Even if I was too proud and angry to go find out for myself. And the powwow, where I didn't even realize it was him until I'd already snapped. Heat crawled up my neck at the memory of him calling me attractive. I'd hidden behind my anger so I wouldn't blush like some kid. Even then, sitting on that bench with him, I'd let myself talk for longer than I meant to. Feeling like I was losing the conversation, mostly because I didn't understand myself much these days, I turned my back on the Cullen and walked into the woods when a thought hit me. I stopped and glanced back at her. You never did answer me. Why aren't you with him? For the first time, her calm wavered. Just a flicker. Her eyes looked almost lost. It was a look I was familiar with, one I had seen in the mirror. No, one I still see when I think of Sam. She took a moment to answer, her eyes looked lost. Because some journeys can only be made alone. I look forward to meeting you again, Miss Clearwater. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reply. I turned and strode into the trees, every step faster than the last. Branches brushed my legs, and my footsteps splashed in the occasional puddle. I wasn't running, hell no, not from her, but my body hadn't gotten the memo. My pulse was a hammer in my ears, every breath sharp. Something told me that if I stayed in her presence much longer, I wouldn't be able to keep my anger down. Just being near her made it want to explode. But no matter how far from her I got, her voice stayed with me. Calm, steady, like she hadn't even needed to think before cutting me open with a handful of words. He has spoken of you. I'd gone into those woods to bleed off anger. Instead, I'd walked straight into something else entirely, something I couldn't name yet, but it was heavier, messy. And it wasn't going away anytime soon. When I finally pushed off the tree and started back toward home, the sky was dimming. I told myself I'd never go near that clearing again. That I'd stay away from her, from all of them. From his rock. But I already knew I was lying. Chapter 115, Assumptions. A fist cut the air in search of my midsection, while a kick from another looked to disrupt my balance. I grabbed the searching fist, twisted it, and leaned toward my first attacker. Once I was in range, I forced my elbow into his sternum and was rewarded with a cracking sound followed by a pained cry as he fell. When I leaned toward the first guy, I lifted my leg out of the way of the kick and then straightened my leg while it was in the air. My foot found purchase in the belly of the second attacker, and the man involuntarily exhaled all the air from his lungs as he too fell to the ground. I straightened my stance and looked at Rohan, who stood outside the circle. Next pair! He shouted. Several men came into the circle to drag the fallen pair out to be tended to. As the next two entered, they separated, trying to split my attention. This time, I charged forward to the nearest one, landing 3 blows before he fell. The other charged me from behind, trying to take advantage of my attention being elsewhere. He didn't realize that it was a trap set specifically for him. There was only one direction he saw an opening in, and he charged it with all the speed he could muster. Only to be met with a foot to his midsection, just like the man in the previous fight. He hit the dirt and curled up like a shrimp on the grill, clutching his belly and trying to catch his breath. Shrimp. God, I miss the variety of food I used to have. Much to my dismay, yak was aptly named. Not my favorite meat here, though they did have some good sheep recipes. On the downside, though, most everything had the same spices: ginger, garlic, and turmeric. So bland. Again, my frustration surfaced with my thoughts of home, and I thought back to my return from the ritual a month ago. 1 month ago. My descent down the stairs was a slow process, but my body was recovering quickly with the return of the fire to my mind. I had lost track of time during the whole thing, but I was still surprised that it was dark by the time I got back to the gate I had started this ritual from. Torches burned in the courtyard of the pagoda, and the robed figures stood waiting for my return. The man I assumed to be the tribal leader stood at the forefront and addressed me. You have returned after giving your fire to the mountain, as all that returned have done before you. The tether will form over time, and you will be able to roam free until you feel its pull to return and strengthen your bond once again. If the tether breaks or if you leave before it forms, you will be devoured by your nature. Something about his words didn't seem right, but my mind was too tired to focus on it right now. I really just wanted to get some food and sleep. Rohan. Take him to his grandmother's hut and see to his needs. Rohan stepped forward and gestured for me to follow him. We wound through the narrow streets until Rohan stopped at a weathered door and pushed it open. Wait here, I will return with some food. As I passed him to walk through the door, I paused and looked into his eyes, trying to convey the severity of my words through my eyes. Lots of food, please?" He chuckled as he walked away. I tried to look around the small room, but the darkness shrouded many details. I took note of a few oil lamps on the walls and grabbed one, then went to a torch on the street, and lit the lamp I carried. Then I returned and lit all the lamps in the house to get a better look around. The only scent in the air was dust. This hut must not have been in use for some time. I wandered around and ended up in what looked to be the main bedroom. There were a few books on a shelf and some chests on the floor that I would inspect later on. Rohan returned with a short knock on the door before he came in with a large platter of food and set it on the table. "Eat, I will come back tomorrow, and we will begin training you." As I sat in the silence and began to consume the meal of bland rice and gamey meat, my mind cleared and focused on what the tribal leader had said. Tether? I felt no tether, and I sure as hell didn't give my fire to the mountain. I can still feel it in my mind. Let's just go along for now and see if anything changes. I don't trust them, but if something goes wrong, it would be smart to be here to get it fixed. Current time. Training me? More like I was training the clans. At first, they treated me like a joke, waiting to see the outsider fall on his face. But when it took 4 of them to put me on the ground, and even then, I was back on my feet before they could savor it, their laughter died. The sneers they wore so easily that first day turned pale and sickly by the end of the session. Now, whatever disrespect they still hold, they keep buried deep where I can't see it. Once the day's training was done, well, me beating the group of them down, I went to my temporary home to call Bella and wish her a happy birthday. I had been surprised to learn that even as far away as I was, their time was just 1 hour behind my current time zone. Not that it mattered for talking to Edythe, who didn't sleep, but it helped me stay connected to Bella. When her voice came through bright and clear over the satellite phone Edythe had gifted me, I felt my shoulders relax a little bit. "Hey Thomas! You wouldn't believe what they are demanding of me. Making me have a birthday party. So, over the top." Her tone made me smile. I could envision her pouting face. I heard Edward's voice in the background. At least I was able to head Alice off and stop her from inviting the whole school over for it. I laughed. "Sounds like you owe Edward big for that one, Bells. You know how hard it is to change Alice's mind when she gets started on something." She laughed wickedly. "He can take any part of me he wants as a reward for that, but he has that option anyway." Whoa, there Bella. Too much information for my ears. I could picture the long-suffering look Edward was no doubt giving Bella right now. "Did you get my gift?" I had gotten Rohan to get me a scroll and did a charcoal drawing of the mountain and village for her. "I did, and I love it. I want to see if I can get it laminated so it won't wear away with time. I want to keep it forever." There it was, the not-so-subtle hints she had been dropping to Edward about her willingness to accept the change to be with him. Again, I could accurately picture his stony face with the hint of pain in his eyes as he ignored the hints. After a short pause, Bella sighed. "I wish you were here. I miss you. And I miss you too, sis. But it's going to be a few more months before I can make it back. I still have so much to learn here." "I know, but I miss you all the same." She sighed again. "Anyway, here. Talk to Edythe. I love you." I heard the handoff of the phone, and then her voice was in my ear, making my whole body shiver in happiness. "Hey, love, still beating up your clansmen? You know it, love. None here can hold a candle to the training I did with Jasper. Makes me wonder how they can claim to keep vampires out if they can't take me on when I am just touching my fire. I think they are still holding something back from me. I don't know, they just have this look sometimes like they still think they can beat me. Well, as close to Volterra as they are, and no one ever hearing of one of my kind being there. Something is keeping them out. Maybe you are right, and they aren't showing you everything just yet." I hear Alice's voice interrupt Edythe. "Come on, Edythe. It's present time. Tell the brick that I miss him and hang up, we are waiting on you." "Fine. I get it. Anyway, I love you and miss you every moment you are away, Thomas. Find what you need there and come home to me. As quickly as I can, love. I hung up the phone and wondered what I could do to get the answers I needed. Then a thought hit me, I haven't shifted since I have been here, and only seen the one yak that I believed was a shifted person. Time to start asking around. Chapter 116, Illyrim Raizel. Thomas POV. Feeling restless and not yet ready to turn in for the night, I started looking over the books in the house. It was a random collection that didn't seem to have a rhyme or reason. That was until I came across one that seemed to be handwritten and not printed. As I stood there and began reading the first page, I realized it was written by my grandmother, Illyrim Raizel. Not as a day-to-day diary, but more as a summary of her life. She spoke of her early life with her younger twin brother Ephraim. They were a simple people and not one of the larger tribes that were heavily impacted by the Euro-American westward expansion. After reading this far, I found myself engrossed, so I went to the table and began reading further. Her people called them white drifting house people and tried to keep the peace with them. This included allowing priests of their god to teach them to read and write. Illyrim herself loved learning and excelled at it, according to the priest. He had even asked her to become a sister of the faith, giving her mind and body to their god. While she did like learning from them, she'd refused. She would not abandon her people's stories, her people's spirits, for the white man's heaven. For that, she was cast out of the mission school, branded ungrateful, a heretic. She found more comfort in her people's history, that her ancestors had been found by Edythe the Wanderer, and he showed them how to move their soul from their bodies to scare away rival tribes and keep an eye on their lands. Years passed, and life was somewhat peaceful until she and her brother began feeling great rage and occasionally coming across a sweet smell in the woods. She wrote of being out in the forest with Ephraim when they first stumbled on it, the cloying, sweet smell that stirred something fierce in their blood. They found a deer drained dry, its body empty of life. Rage overwhelmed them, sudden and primal, and before they understood what was happening, their bodies broke and reshaped. Wolves stood where siblings had knelt. Once they changed back, they returned to the village and told their story to their father. That was when they were told the rest of their history. That during a troubled time in the past, there had been a betrayal in their own tribe. One had used his soul-wandering ability to steal the body of the chief. But later, the soul of the chief returned to find his people in misery because of what the traitor had done. Instead of wasting away like the traitor had hoped, the soul of Taha took refuge in the body of a wolf. And when the tribe uncovered the betrayal, the traitor sought to deny it by spilling innocent blood. Seeing this, Taha rage burned too hot for the wolf's skin to contain. The beast broke, reshaped, and where it had stood rose a man touched by the wolf's spirit. Thus, the first wolf warrior was born. In the years after, more men found themselves able to change when the tribe faced danger. They became protectors, especially against something the elders called the Cold Ones, pale predators who fed on blood and brought ruin wherever they walked. But their father was troubled. Never in all their stories had a woman been spoken of as a soul traveler, much less a wolf warrior. When the truth of Illyrim's change was brought before the elders, a great argument split the council. The elders said that a woman bearing the gift was a threat to the order of the tribe. They whispered that men without the gift would feel dishonored, lessened. They claimed that to allow her to walk as a wolf would fracture the people. A woman's place is in the camp, they said, tending the hearth and the children, not in the hunt or in battle. Ephraim raged at them. Younger though he was, he called them fools, blind with jealousy. But the council would not be swayed. Because he was male, they named him chief, the first wolf warrior of their time. He nearly turned the honor down in protest, but it was Illyrim who convinced him to take it for the good of the people, for their survival, even if it costs us both. The elders forbade Illyrim from changing again, demanded she bury her fire. But she defied them. For her defiance, they cast her out. Her words grew steadier on the page as she wrote of what came after. Banished from her people, she wandered the coast and the forests, alone but not broken. That was when she met the man who would alter her path forever. He was not like the pale people who had come from the east and settled near the tribe. His skin was sun-browned, his eyes dark as wet stone, his manner foreign yet strangely familiar. Without knowing why, she imprinted on him her whole being, anchoring itself to his. His name was Raizel, from a land beyond the seas, half a world away. And he, in turn, fell in love with her. Perth brought Illyrium across the seas and back to his home in Nepal. There, she learned his people also carried old fire in their blood, though it took different shapes. When his clan heard of her wolf, of her defiance, of the power the elders had sought to cage, they claimed her as kin and convinced the couple to move to Jiva's home village, where her fire would not be stifled but studied, sharpened. Here she was surprised to learn that the Jiva believed that in the beginning of memory, 70,000 years ago, a race came from the stars and began modifying those they found. Combining many together with animals and giving them gifts such as strength and durability unknown before. Some could change between shapes and even fly like birds. Some gained the ability to cast what we now call magic to fight and manipulate their surroundings. And then there were the stone-skinned ones. Faster than sight, strong as the greatest beasts, but cursed. The transformation hollowed them, stole their lifeblood. To endure, they turned upon humankind, feeding on the blood of normal people. The Jiva claim those creatures are not of us. They are the flaw in the design, the hunger that was never meant to be. They were cast adrift when the star race abandoned their experiments, but their kind multiplied like shadows. She realized that these are the cold ones of her people's stories, and worse. She went on to describe her life and reveal that she had given birth to 2 children. Her firstborn, Viakra Ephraim Raizel, was strong in the gift of both his mother and father. He showed early signs of shifting into the shape of a tiger rather than a wolf, and everything indicated that he would be more than strong enough to lead the tribe one day. But her second son did not want his gift to awaken, so he requested that it be caged, and he be allowed to go out into the world and live freely. His name was Devansh Perth Raizel, and his leaving Jiva's home nearly broke her. I gave him my blessing to go with my lips, but not with my heart. She wrote. I paused here as the enormity of the words hit me. This was no longer just me reading about a figure in a story, but my own blood history. I went back and reread a few passages to let everything settle more. She received word from Devansh from time to time, but he never returned to visit her. Not even when tragedy struck and her anchor to the world loosened. Perth died in an accident. With the loss of her husband, she then started to speak of old Quileute stories of becoming the wolf and leaving the pain of people behind, but she wanted to stay and watch over Viakra. At least until he became leader of the Tiger clan. The last few pages spoke of her watching as Viakra eventually claimed his place as chief, and shortly after that, she again heard of her son Devansh. When it was revealed that he had died due to the violent ways of the American cities, she described it as her anchor to the world fully let loose. Knowing her firstborn would prosper, she decided to take her wolf form and leave the village. I closed the book after reading the last word and leaned back, my mind whirling with all I had learned. Then it dawned on me that the tribal leader who looked at me with such hatred was actually my uncle. My closest living blood relative on my father's side. With that thought lingering, I went to bed and made plans to learn more of what this Jiva's home had to offer. Chapter 117, Greek Legend. Thomas POV. The next day started out the same as the days before. Rohan took me to train with the group I had been with for the past month, and I was tired of it. After laying waste to a group of 4 at one time, I stormed over to Rohan. Enough of this. I did not come here to beat up weaklings. This is wasting my time. Rohan didn't change his expression. You are wrong, Thomas. This is not your training, but theirs. They believed that they were the best in their generation, only one step from being the strongest. Now they know just how far they have to go. He took a breath and let it out. It has been nearly a month, so your tether to the mountain should be enough that you can once again transform at will. Come with me, and we will begin your true training. As we walked, Rohan spoke. The ones you have been sparring with lately are just encountering their transformation power, none have yet to fully change. You have had an advantage because you were able to use your fire-enhanced strength like you did with your vampire friends back in Forks. I nodded at his words. I have found it strange that you are able to keep regular vampires out of your country with so little strength. I was beginning to think you were doing so only with numbers. I didn't bother telling him that I had not been using all my strength during the training yet, because it wasn't needed. Eventually, we came to another training area where the group looked older than the last. The youngest looked mid-20s and the oldest looking young 30s. There was one that stood out with her beauty. Her features were more traditional Chinese than any I had seen yet. When the group took notice of our approach, one broad-shouldered man with his long hair tied back shouted out, "Finally done playing with the kids, Rohan? Bringing us fresh grass to get chewed up." Rohan didn't so much as twitch at the taunt. He only gestured toward the broad-shouldered man. "Dorhe, meet Thomas Raizel. You will go first." I stepped forward and gave a nod to the man, then looked around to take in the size of the area. Rohan shook his head. "There is no ring here. You will fight, and we will get out of your way or be trampled." The man Rohan called Dorhe laughed and moved towards me. "I hope you heal fast, Thomas." "Not one to let a taunt go," I replied. "I hope you don't cry easily, Dorhe." The clansmen watching all laughed, but not with me. No, they laughed at me. Their laugh had an edge to it, like they were all in on something that I didn't know. It made me even more cautious. Dorhe's smile faded, and he charged me with a shout. Arms out like he was trying to catch me in a hug. Knowing that he wouldn't be nice enough to let me go once he got those arms around me, I sidestepped and moved forward out of his reach. As I passed him, I knocked his arm out of the way and landed a strong left punch to his ribs. He quickly moved out of my range and brought a hand to his ribs, no longer smiling. That hurt. I stood back on the balls of my feet, ready to move in whatever direction I needed to. "Well, you didn't think I was looking to hug it out with you, did you?" This got a laugh of amusement from a couple of people in the crowd and more than just a few whistles. Dorhe straightened up and smiled an ominous smile. "No, I didn't." The muscles of his chest and shoulders started to wiggle and ripple, his arms started to elongate with the sound of popping bones, and then the rest of his body began to change. His jaw jutted forward into a muzzle, the sides of his head just above his ears suddenly sprouted horns. His legs bent unnaturally, reshaping until hooves gouged the dirt. Now standing before me, clenching its hands was a figure from ancient Greece, a minotaur. I froze for half a second. Well, that's new. And ugly. Dorhe laughed in a much deeper voice. "Time to feel pain." Dorhe now stood just over 7 feet tall, if I had to guess. Quite the change from the stocky 5'4" frame he'd had moments before. I wasn't used to anyone having the height or reach advantage over me. My first thought was that he'd be strong but slow, maybe clumsy, having to relearn his body with the new bulk from his transformation. Not much to worry about. I was very wrong. His charge came faster than I could track. Instinct yanked my arms up across my chest just in time. His fist slammed into me like a wrecking ball. Bone-shaking power surged through my forearms, and for a heartbeat, I was sure they'd snap. Not since Henry Burgess on the trail back in Forks had I felt so completely overpowered. The blow launched me backward, my breath taken away by the force of the punch. I managed to dig my heels into the dirt, sliding instead of rolling, dust spraying up around me. My chest burned, my arms screamed before going numb, but I was still upright. Barely. Gasps and low whistles rippled through the crowd. They weren't surprised by Dorhe's strength, but by my ability to react in time. They were watching to see if I'd fold. Dorhe didn't give me any chance to recover from my surprise. He was on me instantly, hooves gouging the earth, fists hammering down like iron clubs. It was all I could do to dodge and redirect his blows, knowing a solid hit could potentially end the fight. Trying to pull in just enough of the fire to increase my speed and strength like I had learned to do with Jasper, I started my counter-offensive. Dorhe's next swing came from the right, a sweeping hook designed to get around my blocking forearms and take my head off. But now my surprise was past, now I was ready. My body blurred in the eyes of the spectators as I moved faster than before, slipping under his strike. My fist drove up into Dorhe's gut, attempting to force air from his lungs. Not waiting to see the results, I fired off 2 more punches to his midsection before jumping away as I felt him trying to yet again enclose me in his arms. Once we were separated, we both reset ourselves. Dorhe snarled, "So, not just grass after all." I bared my teeth in a grin, "Are those tears I see in the corner of your eyes?" Dorhe's nostrils flared, his teeth grinding in frustration. He scraped a hoof against the dirt like a bull about to charge, then he came at me with a renewed fury. His fists blurring between 1-2 combinations, broken occasionally by him trying to grasp any part of my body in reach at the time. I ducked and wove, redirecting his blows where I could. I was pulling in more of the fire as we continued. Every strike I landed now drew a grunt or a flinch, but every time one of his fists grazed me, I could feel the pain rattle through me. The back and forth lasted for what seemed an hour but was probably less than 5 minutes. But as I pulled more and more fire in, he was hitting me less and less. My blows were starting to really affect him, causing him to stumble a time or two. Dorhe swung wide, his horned head lowering as though he meant to gore me. I sidestepped, my fist cracking into his ribs again, and this time the sound wasn't just impact, it was the sound of bones breaking. He staggered back, bellowing in pain and rage, nearly losing his footing. He clutched at his side where I and everyone with ears knew his ribs were broken. Those watching were in shock, many letting out sounds of surprise. Amazed that Dorhe was being overpowered, something they thought impossible. I pressed in, my vision going red-tinged. My fists hammered against his guard, each blow pushing him just a little further back. His hooves kicked up dust as he tried to dig in, struggling to hold me back. Dorhe tried one last desperate swing, with all his might. But this left him wide open as I slipped under his blow to deliver an uppercut straight into his jaw. His head snapped back, and his eyes rolled. His legs went stiff, and he fell sideways. His body bounced once when he hit the ground, then he was still. I stood over him, breathing heavily, and tried to trash talk, but all that came out was a mix of a growl and a tiger's roar. I shook my head to clear my thoughts and stepped back from the downed form. When I started to calm down a little, I noticed that the hair on my arms was standing straight up, and if I wasn't mistaken, it was longer than usual as well. The crowd murmured as Rohan went to check on the still form of Dorhe, who was slowly reverting to his human form. Bruises and welts started to show now that his fur had receded into his body. Rohan stood after checking on him. "Well, he should be just fine, if not sore for a few days." He then turned his eyes to me. "I think you have trained enough for the day, Thomas. We need to work on your control and transformations next. The mountain doesn't usually form a tether so strong, so quickly." Chapter 118, Dial It Up. Thomas POV. I sat in my grandmother's house in meditation. It had been 3 weeks since my fight with Dorhe, and I was still focusing on my shifting. The issue I was running into was that my fire wasn't reacting the way it should, according to the practice here. Rohan explained that I should pull the fire into my body until it's full, and that should be my first transformation into my strengthened form, though still human. Then, if I pull harder, it should feel almost like ice breaking, and more fire would flood into me until I reached the halfway transformed state. In that state, I should again be able to break another level of separation, and when I do that, I will transform into my tiger shape. But for me, as always, when I pull all the fire into my body, I go straight through to my fully shifted giant tiger form. Again, I tried. Pull in only the heat of the fire and let it fill my body. I feel my muscles gain strength, and my whole body almost vibrates as I stay still in my meditation. Once I have that feeling, I try to hold onto it for as long as possible. Careful to pull in no more than I have, I lose track of time as I focus only on my fire. The funny thing about trying to think of nothing is that it brings issues that are weighing on your mind to the front. No matter what I tried, the thoughts still came. A phone call from Edythe 2 weeks ago, explaining that the family would be moving away from Forks. She then told me about Bella's birthday party and how a simple paper cut had resulted in disaster. Jasper was beside himself in guilt for his inability to resist his nature that day, and Edward's guilt that Bella was in danger yet again because of him. Edythe had voted against leaving, but she and Carlisle had been outvoted. She explained that Edward had called in favors owed to the rest of the family to get his way. More than a little upset, I had hung up on Edythe and immediately called Bella. Her number going directly to voicemail only stopped me for about 5 minutes before I remembered the landline Charlie had to have for work. Charlie answered it right away, and the relief in his voice when he found me on the other line was evident. He quickly explained that the day the Cullens left town, Bella had wandered into the woods and gotten lost. The search took all evening and a good portion of the night before Sam from the Quileute reservation had found her. Since then, Bella had been almost catatonic. He had even gone so far as to call Renee and have her come to town to take her to Jacksonville, hoping that a change of scenery would help. But Bella had exploded and thrown a tantrum the likes neither parent had ever seen. Guilt hit me that I had not thought to give this number to Charlie in case he needed me, and I apologized profusely. Knowing that my sister needed me, I didn't hesitate, I just told Charlie I would be there as soon as I could get to the airport. Then I hung up the phone. I started moving through the house and gathering everything I would take with me. I hope the tribe doesn't try to keep me here. After all that Bella did for me, how could I not be there for her? My satellite phone rang and I saw it was Charlie's number, so I picked it up right away. "Did you forget something, Charlie? You'd better not come back until you are done with everything you needed to accomplish there, Thomas." It was Bella. Her voice sounded scratchy and tired. Her tone was sharp but still fragile, like she was barely holding it together. "You have been hurt, Bella. How can I stay away? You were there for me, so I will be there for you. Don't you dare, Thomas. You can't fix this. You can't fix me. What you are doing there is more important than sitting and watching me cry in my room. I don't want to see you until you have learned everything you need to." "Bella. No." Her voice cracked, but her words held. "You left for a reason. You're supposed to come back stronger. Don't make the sacrifice you and Edythe made just to come back because I'm broken. I will survive, I will even go back to school and try not to worry Charlie so much. But until you can say you are done there, don't come back." What she said made some sense. But I still hated it, and I told her so. "I hate it." "Me too," she whispered. "But stay. Please. For me." I wrenched my mind from that memory and realized I was fully shifted into my tiger shape. Another failure. Another month had passed, and I was finally making some real headway. The hardest part about my shifting was finding a way to pause the pull on the fire. Those here talked about a barrier that they had to break through, but I had none, so I had to create one. It actually helped when I sort of envisioned a dial in my mind. Today I was practicing with the group again, but this time my opponent was the woman who may. She was of the Fox clan and extremely beautiful. When we first met, she had been very dismissive of me. But lately, I could see she was trying to get closer to me. But for some reason, there was a look in her eyes that I didn't like. She was too calculating, I guess would be the word. Dorothy had turned out to be one of my few friends here, once he healed up. He was the only one who would sit and go over what the change was like in his mind. I found out that it was actually his older brother in yak form that I had tossed off the trail my first day here. That conversation had led to another revelation. When they are human, they can pull in some strength from their tether. But only enough to be about 2 times as strong as normal. When they are in their fully transformed shape, they are as strong as the animal would be in nature. But when they go to their mixed form, they get the strength of their fully transformed self plus the size and dexterity of a human body. That last part floored me. It explained Dorhe's ridiculous speed for something that looked so bulky. It also made me realize why the clans here could keep out vampires without calling in outside help. The mixed forms weren't just monsters from myths, they were weapons, forged to fight the cold ones head-on. Dorhe had grinned when he explained it, like he was letting me in on a secret only warriors knew. "That's why you never underestimate us," he'd said, thumping his chest with a fist big enough to dent stone. "A yak might look slow, but when the horns and hooves come out, you won't laugh anymore." I hadn't laughed then. And I sure wasn't laughing now, facing Hume in the ring. Her eyes glittered, sly and sharp, as she circled me. The fox in her was always there, even when she looked human, too smooth, too graceful, too aware of how every motion drew eyes. The others might be distracted by her beauty. I wasn't. What I saw was calculation. The same look Jasper used to wear when he played chess, patient, predatory, already 3 moves ahead. I rolled my shoulders, heat from my fire filling my muscles. I'd made some progress with the dial trick, slowing the pull so I didn't leap straight into the giant tiger. Today would test if it consciously worked, or if I was still lying to myself. I couldn't rely on it subconsciously coming out like in my fight with Dorhe. Hume smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Don't hold back, Raizel," she said, voice like silk hiding steel. "I want to see what you really are." I bared my teeth in something between a grin and a snarl. "Careful what you ask for." And then she moved. She was faster than any vampire I had seen, including Edward. Her movement flowed like water, impossible to predict. One heartbeat, she was at my front, the next she slid around to my side, her palm striking for my ribs with surgical precision. The impact stung, sharp and precise. No attempt to hurt me, but a strike meant to rattle the nerves, to show me she could get inside my defenses effortlessly. I answered with a quick jab, but she wasn't there any longer. She had slipped out of range with a twist of her hips that looked effortless again. "Okay, let's try this." I mentally turned the dial to heat, intending it to just pull in the heat of the fire. Though I couldn't feel it, a tension filled the air. Later, Dorhe told me it felt like a predator stepping out into the open. An instinctive fear took his breath away. Hume's eyes never left mine, even as she took several steps back. When I advanced to keep the distance close, she twisted her body, spun, kicked low toward my knee, her gaze stayed fixed on me as much as possible. Calculating. Testing. She wanted to see how I would react. As if bored, I reached down and grabbed her leg before it could connect and shoved her back, off balance. She stumbled back 2 steps. She nodded her head, as if my reaction confirmed something to her. Then her body rippled. Bones cracked, her spine arched, and her hands lengthened into clawed fingers tipped with dark nails. Her face didn't change much, just sharper, more vulpine, but her aura shifted entirely. The fox had stepped out of the woman. The crowd grew excited as her tail burst into being, a sleek plume of russet that swayed behind her like it had a mind of its own. "Now," she whispered, her voice carrying unnaturally, "let's see what kind of fire burns in a Raizel." And then she was gone from my sight. Chapter 119, Fresh Meat. One heartbeat, she stood before me, sharp and graceful. The next, the space was empty, just a puff of dirt settling where her paws had pressed to move. I took a quick step to my left and watched as she appeared, trying to rake her claws along the back of my shoulder. I reached for her wrist, but she jerked back too quickly. "Ah, young Thomas!" No touching without permission. She smiled at me from a safe distance and taunted. But to her surprise, I disappeared from her eyes the same as she liked to do to me. She spun around to see if I would appear there, but I didn't. If she had kept looking forward, I would have been nose to nose with her. I flicked her in the back of the head, causing her to yelp in surprise and jump forward. When she jumped, she also tried to kick backward to keep me from capitalizing on being behind her. I caught her heel on my forearm and shoved it aside before it could connect, the force rattling through me but not enough to unbalance. Her tail lashed once, annoyed, and she turned with a smirk that didn't quite mask the spark of irritation in her eyes. Cheeky. I see the tiger has claws after all. Claws. I grinned, circling her the way she'd done to me. That was just a finger flick. The crowd around us chuckled, Dorothy the loudest, though even his laughter carried a note of disbelief at what he'd just seen. Matching a fox at her own game wasn't something most would dare attempt. Hume dropped lower, her stance shifting, sharper now. Very well, she said, voice smooth as silk but edged like a blade. No more games, Thomas. Let's see how long you can keep up with me. She lunged again, faster this time, her movements sharper, testing if my trick was skill or luck. She lunged, faster this time, her claws a blur. I slipped aside, my dial still held steady inside me, keeping the fire from tipping me all the way over. For a few breaths, we were nothing but streaks of motion, her tail flashing, my fists darting, claws raking just shy of flesh, knuckles grazing fur and fabric. Gasps rose from the crowd. They weren't used to seeing someone match a fox's speed unless they were half-shifted already. And I wasn't. I was still standing here in my human skin. Hume hissed when I caught her wrist mid-swipe and forced it wide, but she twisted with inhuman grace, slipping out of my grip like smoke. Her tail covered my side as her right leg landed a solid hit into my side, as she spun, knocking me back a half step. I grunted, then drove forward with a straight punch, halting just short of her chest. She froze, eyes wide, her claws hovering an inch from my throat. The crowd was silent. For a heartbeat, the only sound was both of us breathing hard, locked in that moment where one move would end it for either side. Then Hume's lips curved into the faintest smile, though I could see the tightness around her eyes. Interesting, she murmured, pulling her claws back first. I lowered my fist, chest still heaving. Not bad for fresh grass, right? That earned me a ripple of laughter from the crowd, Dorothy's booming voice carrying over all of them. But behind their amusement, I could feel the unease. They'd just watched me go toe-to-toe with a fox in her mixed form without shifting at all. And Hume? She didn't look angry. No, what glinted in her gaze as she studied me was far more dangerous. Calculation. I am no herbivore, Thomas. No, at the very least, you are fresh meat. Just the way I like it. With that, Hume left the ring, and I released the dial in my mind. There was no reason to release it, now that I had control, but there was also no reason to stay in that state either. However, I do expect it to become my natural state when I finally go home. Finally, Edythe won't have to worry about crushing me with her strength. As the crowd began to disperse, Dorothy caught my eye and gave me a nod. Rohan walked up to me, as usual, with little expression on his dour face. Your training is finally bearing fruit. To keep up with the strength of a half-transformed fox isn't hard, but to match their speed and still be in your human form. That's unheard of. I shook my head. I don't think she was really giving it her all, she seemed like she was testing me more than anything. Still an impressive feat, Thomas. Keep it up. I just nodded, not bothering to tell him that I was already making progress on that very thing. As we spoke, the other clansmen drifted back to whatever their pastimes were, arguing technique, nursing bruises, trading bets about who could beat who, but the ripples the match had left didn't settle. Ready to retire for the day, I said my goodbye to Rohan, but he had more to say. Don't rush too much, Thomas. Testing the tether to the mountain so soon, or too much could harm you more than help you. I just waved him off. Rohan's habit of doling out information in rationed bites irritated me. It made me feel like he was trying to control my growth, and I didn't like that. When I reached the hut I was staying in, my attention was pulled to a drawing I had done the previous day. It was my memory of the day Edythe showed herself under the sun to me. The drawing was done in charcoal, so everything had soft edges, but I knew what I was looking at, so it was easy to make out. I sat at the table, massaging my forearm where a kick had landed, when my phone lit up. I crossed the room and looked at the number calling and saw it was Edythe. We had spoken often after the conversation where she told me that they had moved from Forks, and I had to admit that she had little choice in the matter. Her family had been everything to her for so long that she would stick with them even when they were making a mistake. If only to keep pointing out that it was a mistake at every available opportunity. She knew that I would have some words for Edward when I saw him, but I knew where to draw the line. I picked up the phone as a warm, simple relief flooded my mind. "Hey, love. You sound tired," came her reply. A large smile took over my face at the sound of her voice. "Training. Always," I said. "You. We are unpacking at the new house." I chuckled. "Where did you guys decide to settle this time?" "We are in Ithaca, New York." The house had already been bought by Jasper. He and Alice wanted to go to Cornell to study philosophy. Carlisle has already picked up a night shift in a nearby hospital. "How's everyone else handling the new house?" She laughed. "Esme's upset she can't remodel the house with us all here. But she has already started looking for a new project in the area. She thinks I don't know, but she hopes to get a house for you and I to move into if you come here." I laughed at the thought. "Well, I am doing all my schoolwork through correspondence courses right now, but college shouldn't be hard to get into. I am still hoping to get back before the end of the school year to officially walk the aisle. Everyone else is the same, minus my stupid brother. He is either sitting in a dark room staring at the wall or off trying to hunt down Victoria. He isn't very good at it, though. He thought she was in both Texas and Colorado at the same time last week. Jasper had an old friend help Edward track her through El Paso before she lost him for good. Now he is waiting to hear the next rumor to go chase. He is actually kinda pathetic. We talked for about an hour, some laughter and some worry. She didn't like the little I told her about the feeling that Hume gave me, but settled for telling me to be careful and learn more about the clan politics. No way there weren't any with a tribe as diverse as this one. Eventually, my phone sounded off that the battery was about to die, and we had to say our goodbyes. When we finally hung up, the hut felt both empty and lighter. I curled up in my cot and let my mind wander until sleep finally pulled me under. I was hoping to dream of my copper-haired beauty. Chapter 120, Tribe Politics. Thomas POV. It was just 2 weeks later that I received the first meeting invitation from my dear uncle, Viagra. Or was it Viagra? Hard to keep it straight. Hard to keep it straight. Viagra. I am going to kill it with my dad jokes one day. Rohan had informed me while I was leaning against the post of the sparring yard, watching a Crane clan member and a Horse clan member go at it. To my eyes, it was like something out of a comic book, a centaur trading blows with Hawk Girl. The first time I'd seen one of the Bird clan in their half-form, I understood where Christianity got its idea for angels. I snorted. So what's changed? What's happened that my uncle, the great tribal leader, has finally deemed me worth talking to? Rohan just shrugged. I didn't ask the messenger who passed the information to me. The meeting is for tomorrow morning, on the 3rd floor of the pagoda. I will pick you up after breakfast. I nodded my head in acknowledgement and went back to watching the fight, and let my mind drift over my newest idea to help me train. I had been trying to go from 0% to 50% of my shift, but it was proving challenging after I made the 0 to 25% notch on my mental dial. What if I went from 100% and tried to slowly pull back to 50%? I spent the rest of the evening working on that and was ready the next morning when Rohan showed up to take me to the pagoda. You know, Rohan, I could have found my way to the biggest building in town on my own without getting lost. After knowing you these last few months, I have my doubts about that. Regardless, I was instructed to bring you, so I will. I just shook my head as we made our way to the first floor. The walls were covered with art renditions of the clans in all forms. I paused to look over some that looked like Egyptian gods. Is this accurate? Did some of the clans rule Egypt and claim godhood? Rohan nodded his head. There was a time that they did just that. At first, in efforts to help people, and then later generations kept it up for power. Something happened later that showed them the error of their ways, and now we live as simple clans in this small part of the world. We continued up to the third floor as my mind adjusted to the information I had just learned. Rohan led me to some broad wooden doors that he knocked on and then slid open. I entered to see my uncle sitting cross-legged on a raised platform, dressed in robes that managed to look both ceremonial and functional. His eyes tracked me the entire way across the floor. He had 4 people with him, 2 on either side. I walked until I was about 5 feet from where he sat and waited to hear what he wanted from me. Rohan gave a bow, but I just watched, refusing to copy him. A flash of anger came and went in my uncle's eyes. Thomas Raizel, Viakra said, his voice deep but carefully neutral. You've caused quite the stir since your arrival. I smirked faintly. What can I say? My mom hit me with a spoon a lot when I was young. One of his attendants chuckled softly, but Viakra didn't even smile. His gaze stayed focused on me, testing if he could intimidate me. I just stared back. You shifted young, he said after a pause. Much younger than any of our clans. For us, the fire doesn't awaken until near 25 years of age. But you carried it before manhood. I shrugged, careful to keep my tone casual. I think it awoke when I watched my mother being killed in front of me. At least it seemed to always be there after that happened. My shift wasn't by choice either. Earlier this year, a vampire tried to use me as a chew toy. My tiger side awoke to protect me. I have been working to harness it ever since. One of the attendants broke in at that point, but our understanding is that you are friendly with the empty ones. I shrugged. The coven I know is different from most of their kind, they don't feed on innocent humans. They help me with no thought of taking advantage of me. It has made me strong, training with them. Viakra studied me with his golden eyes as he leaned forward slightly. And you want this strength to lead? Do you think strength alone is enough? I blinked, caught off guard by the idea. Lead. You bear the Raizel blood, he said. My son has not yet awakened his fire. The clans wonder what that means. They whisper, and I must know if you intend to fan those whispers into flame. So that was it. Not just curiosity, but fear. Fear for his son. Fear for his place. I tilted my head, letting the silence stretch before answering. I didn't come here to steal thrones or titles. I came here to learn. Your son is safe from me. Unless I let the words hang, or he decides otherwise. Something flickered in Viakra's expression, but he smoothed it away quickly. Very well, he said, his voice once again measured. Then let us speak of alliances. Humay's clan has approached me with an offer. A marriage bond, to tie Fox and Tiger together. My stomach tightened. So that was the excuse. And Humay's too smooth smile the last time we sparred suddenly made a lot more sense. I let out a short laugh. To what end? Viakra's golden eyes didn't blink at my response. Fox and Tiger together would strengthen bonds. Make the tribe stronger. A union now would settle your place in our community. My mind raced for a moment in thought. Would Humay come to the Tiger clan, or would I go to the Fox clan? Viagra's eyes flashed with a cunning light. As you said on your first day. You came with no clan, as no clan brought you here. So, you would go to the Fox clan. I gave a chuckle, that could be a boon for the Tiger clan, as I wouldn't be there in the coming years to challenge. And in the Fox clan, any challenge I would make could be ignored, as two tigers can't lead different clans at the same time. Correct. Viagra's lips curved, though it was more baring of teeth than a smile. You are not as naive as some hoped. Yes. In the Fox clan, any ambitions would be contained. Your voice so troublesome here would be theirs to manage. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze without flinching. So, this isn't about strengthening the tribe. It's about making sure I'm not a problem for you. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. One of his attendants shifted uncomfortably, but Viagra never looked away. You mistake caution for fear, he said at last, voice smooth as silk stretched taut. I do what I must to preserve balance. You being here is unpredictable. The clans whisper. I must answer those whispers. I smirked. Then let them whisper. I didn't come here to take your throne. And I sure as hell won't be traded like livestock to another clan just so you can sleep easier at night. For the first time, Viagra's mask cracked, the faintest flash of irritation crossing his face before he forced it still again. Be careful, nephew, he said quietly, though the weight behind the words was anything but gentle. Defiance carries its own cost. Even for Raizel blood. I threw a rumor I had heard recently into his face, and just what was the worth of Raizel blood before black blood was introduced? Stagnation only takes place in a still pond, uncle. New streams make for cleaner water. The room chilled in the silence that followed my words. One attendant stiffened, another drew in a sharp breath like I'd spat blasphemy. Even Rohan shifted slightly at my side, as though weighing whether to step between us before things turned violent. Viagra's golden eyes narrowed to slits. His voice dropped, low and dangerous. Careful where you tread, boy. You speak of matters you don't understand. Bloodlines are not streams to be polluted at whim. I tilted my head, letting my smirk widen just enough to make it sting. Maybe not. But streams that never change, dry up. Maybe the whispers aren't about me being unpredictable, uncle. Maybe they're about you being predictable. His fists clenched and his posture straightened before he stilled himself. The mask slid back into place, but I'd seen it the crack, the flash of genuine fury. Finally, he leaned back, gaze cool once more. We will see how long your fire burns before it consumes you. I almost laughed at that, but then he shifted tactics. Hume has shown interest in you. She is clever, beautiful, and her clan is willing. You could find power at her side, security for yourself, for your line. A fox and a tiger would make strong heirs. My stomach twisted. Her sly eyes, the too smooth smile when we sparred, it all clicked now. This wasn't a proposal. It was a snare. I kept my voice steady. Hume is cunning, I'll give her that. But she doesn't want me. She wants the weapon I carry. The fire. No, I quickly thought to myself. The Fox clan has fire. They want the Quileute blood. Right now, only the Tiger clan has that. A child born in the next year or so would be old enough when Viagra steps down from leading the tribe. One of the attendants frowned, but Viagra only arched a brow. And what does the Hollow One want? For half a second, the name caught in my throat. Edythe. Her steady hand on my back when my temper raged out of control, the calm she'd given me when I thought I'd lose myself. She hadn't asked me for thrones or titles or alliances. Just me. She doesn't see me as anything but me, I said at last, voice flat but edged. That's the difference. The attendants exchanged glances at my bluntness. Viagra's lips curved, though it was more baring of teeth than a smile. The fox offers you a place among us. The Hollow One offers you exile. Choose carefully, Thomas Raizel. Fire that burns too far from the hearth leaves only ash. I met his gaze without blinking. Then I'll take the ash over a gilded cage. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on as I turned to leave, Rohan quick to follow me. Chapter 121, Who May? As I walked back to my hut with Rohan at my side, I asked. I have not shifted here, at least in public. You saw me back in Forks and know my abnormal size. Did you tell anyone? Even my uncle? Rohan shook his head. No. It never came up. I was just asked what your shape was. And you have heard no rumors about my size? No one else has brought it up. Correct. He said evenly, why do you ask? I glanced sideways at him. Because it makes me wonder about the Fox clan. Why do they want me? No, let me ask you another question. If I can match a minotaur in my human form, just how strong do you think I will be in my half-shift? Rohan shook his head and exhaled slowly, there is no telling. You could potentially be stronger than any clan member in thousands of years. But only you and I know about your enormous size and your tiger shape. It was my turn to shake my head. No. There was one other who saw me. The Fox clan member who was sent to first check on me. I shifted in front of him. Before I knew about the tribe. Rohan fell silent at my words, his expression unreadable as usual. I left him to mull it over. The inner clan politics bored me quite frankly. Once I had what I needed, I was gone anyway. These few months just showed me more that this was not my home. No, I think my home is a person, not a place. That evening, I sought out Dorhe for a spar. I needed the distraction, and he was always willing to trade bruises. By the time we were finished, both of us were limping while half laughing as we made our way to some benches nearby. You're getting faster, Dorhe muttered between breaths, rubbing his shoulder where my last strike had landed. Foxes won't like that. I gave him a crooked grin. Foxes don't like much when they aren't the ones winning. As if summoned by the words, I saw her. Who May stood at the edge of the sparring yard, watching with that same unreadable smile she wore when looking at me. When Dorhe caught sight of her, he gave me a look, one brow raised, and muttered something under his breath about trouble with a tail. And made his excuses to leave me alone. As if she had been waiting to catch me alone, Who May moved toward me. Her steps were light and smooth, her hips swaying. The kind of walk that turned every eye her way and held them until they became self-conscious and turned away, blushing. Even in her human form, she carried a fox-like grace. She used her whole body like a weapon, and every movement was calculated to unbalance whoever watched. You fight well, she said, her voice smooth, low, a melody meant to slip under the skin. Better than most who've been here far longer. Even Dorhe struggles to keep pace. I gave a shrug. He lands plenty of hits. Her smile curved just enough to show a hint of teeth. He lands them, yes. But you shake them off. That makes you dangerous. Stronger than most realize. She stopped just close enough that I could feel the heat of her body radiating toward me. Strength like that shouldn't be left wandering without a place. Without purpose. I leaned back slightly, feigning casual. My purpose here is training. Nothing more. She tilted her head, studying me, eyes narrowing as though peeling back layers. Training is a means, not an end. You know that. The fire in you burns too bright to stay in the shadows forever. The clan see it. My clan sees it. She took a seat next to me on the bench, slightly closer than would be normal for two people who had met only a handful of times. Close enough for any accidental touch to be played off as a coincidence. A union between fox and tiger would give you allies. Protection. Influence. And perhaps something more. I met her gaze, refusing to flinch. That sounds a lot like politics dressed up as a bedtime story. Hu Mei's laugh was soft, sultry, but the calculation in her eyes never faltered. Politics are simply survival, Thomas. Surely you see that. Alone, you will always be a threat to someone. With me. Sorry, with my clan, you would be untouchable. Respected. Desired. Her voice lingered on the last word, making it sound less like diplomacy and more like an invitation. I exhaled slowly, pushing myself up before she could lean in any closer. My tone stayed even, steady. I didn't come here for politics or alliances. My focus is on my training. That's all I can give right now. Something flickered across her face, not quite anger, not quite amusement. Her smile settled back into place, but it was thinner now. You can't run from this forever. The clans will demand to know where you stand. And when that day comes, you'll wish you had chosen someone at your side. I turned away before she could press further, my pulse still drumming with the weight of her words. The fox wasn't wrong, the clans would keep circling, trying to bind me before I even knew how to control myself. And if I stayed here, they'd keep cornering me until I slipped. No, I needed space. Distance. Somewhere, the whispers couldn't reach me, and no calculating eyes could measure me. It wasn't time to leave yet, but getting out of the village for a time would be a good thing. By the time the moon rose, my mind was made up. At dawn, I would leave the village behind and take to the mountains. Just me, the fire, and the tiger. The morning air was sharp and cold, with a hint of moisture in the air, hinting at snow later in the day. The village was quiet as I took the path to the younger clan members' training ground. I knew I would find Rohan there, and if I was going to leave, I felt I needed to tell him at least. He watched me approach him, his eyes narrowing at the small pack slung over my shoulder. So, you've decided? I nodded. It's just what I see as the natural next step in my training. Besides, I could use the space away from the politics, away from other people's agendas. For a long moment, Rohan said nothing. Then he gave a single slow nod. Then go. But don't vanish completely. Check in when you can. Even tigers need interaction with their own kind. A faint smile touched my lips. That almost sounds like you'll miss me. Hardly. He arched a brow. But if you don't come back, he will sulk. And I've no patience for his whining. I slung the pack back onto my shoulder. Then I guess I'll just have to come back and kick him around every once in a while. The first rays of dawn touched the mountain tops as I left the village behind, my feet carrying me toward the wild, where only my own thoughts would keep me company. The path ran before me, as far as my eye could see. I knew eventually I would have to leave it, make a path of my own. But for now, I simply wanted distance from the village and all the distractions that tried to take my time away from my goal. A day and a half later, I paused at a ridge, scanning for what I needed. A place to leave my pack and clothes, something to come back to when I wanted rest. Seeing nothing yet, I kept moving. Just before I needed to find a place to rest for the night, I found it. A cleft in the mountainside, half shielded by a jut of ice-covered stone. Big enough to crawl into, hidden enough to keep my belongings safe from the weather and scavengers. It wasn't big enough for me in my tiger shift, but anything that big probably already had an occupant. I stripped down and put my clothes in the pack, then crawled out of the den. I adjusted a few rocks in the area to make it harder to see and pulled the fire into my body, completing my shift. I stretched, my claws digging deep into the ground through the frozen turf. When I was finished, I stood at my full height at 6 feet tall and nearly 1.5 feet long head to tail. The world looked smaller from here, the ridge less daunting. Snow swirled around me in white flurries, but where it touched my fur, it melted instantly against the heat of my body. I lowered my head, sniffed the air. Sharp. Clean. Untouched. My breath came out in great clouds, more steam than mist. Then I moved. The first stride shattered the crust of ice beneath me, scattering shards across the slope. The second had me leaping, paws striking with a weight that shook snow from the ledges. By the third, I was running. A blur of muscle tearing down the mountainside, wind howling in my ears. I had forgotten just how free I felt when I shifted and ran through the forest back in forks. Now I ran through a land of snow and ice with few trees to keep me covered. The challenges of my size started to show in this terrain. My paws, each over 1/6 in long and wide, punched holes deep into drifts. Every step resulted in a loud tremor, cracking frozen earth. There was no subtlety in this form in these conditions. I needed to learn and adapt, test my footing before placing my weight. Snow sprayed in glittering arcs as I tore across the ridge, each bound leaving deep craters behind. In forks, the forest had softened my steps, trees and soil muffling the sound of my paws. Here in the high places of Nepal, there was no such cover. Every movement echoed. Every stride proclaimed my presence to anything with ears. I slowed, adjusting. Testing. The drifts weren't uniform, some carried me with only a crunch, while others collapsed, sending my limbs plunging nearly to the shoulder. A normal tiger would skim the surface, weight spread across smaller paws. Me? I was an avalanche in black stripes. I tried a sidelong leap, twisting to land on rock instead of snow. The landing cracked stone, splinters flying, but at least the footing held. I snorted, steam pluming from my mouth, and tried again lighter this time, pulling back my strength the way I had with my fire dial. It worked, barely. My bulk still drove fissures into the frozen ridge. Frustration rumbled in my chest. Speed and strength were mine in abundance, but stealth, subtlety, finesse? Those would take work. Yet the air was so sharp, so clean, that the growl faded before it left my throat. My muscles surged with every stride. My heart hammered not with fear, but exhilaration. For the first time in weeks, no eyes followed me. No schemes pressed in. It was just me, the fire, and the endless white. I angled upward, muscles straining, claws scraping at ice and stone. Each bound carried me higher into the peaks, where the wind screamed and the cold bit harder, though my body burned hot enough that the frost steamed away before it could settle. This was what I had come for. Not politics. Not whispers. Just the challenge of the wild. The only opponent here was myself. Chapter 122, Four Shapes. Weeks passed, and while I was absent from the village, whispers filled the silence I left behind. A few members of the bird clan claimed they had seen something unnatural cutting across the high passes they flew over. Tracks, they said, wide enough for a man to sit inside. Paw prints that spoke of a beast far larger than any tiger should be. The stories spread fast, growing in the telling. By the time the scouts convinced others to join them in investigating, half the village was murmuring about a monster roaming the peaks. But when the group finally reached the place, the trail told a different story. The prints were there, yes, broad, heavy, impressive, but not the impossible marks that had been described. Still large, still unsettling, but within the limits of reason. Far from the beast the bird clan had painted with their words. And yet, doubt lingered. For some, the ordinary explanation wasn't enough. The Fox clan members were abnormally quiet, as was the tribal leader. I had found the perfect training environment. I had gotten so lost in my tiger shift that I had only made one phone call to Edythe and Bella, respectively. Edythe was counting the days of our separation. She said the school in Ithaca was even more boring than ever before. With only her and Alice going, it was a challenge to stay under the radar. With the whole family in school, there was a buffer that only numbers can provide. Edward still refused to do anything more than lock himself away unless he heard a new rumor concerning Victoria. So that left Alice and Edythe to fend off the hormonal teens without drawing more attention than normal. We were both looking forward to reuniting once I was done here. Bella sounded better, more animated than I had heard since Edward left. Like she finally found something to work towards. She even started hanging out with Jacob, but she wouldn't tell me what they were doing. I didn't push too hard, just happy she was back to a semblance of the stubborn girl I knew. My stomach rumbled as I sat patiently overlooking a recently used trail. I was hoping to take a sheep, but hunting was no easy thing, ending in failure more often than not. The first couple of weeks, I starved more than I ate. My sheer size spooked off any herds long before I got close. Patience became survival. Hours of stillness, breath held, muscles trembling. But the waiting gave me time to work on the real challenge, my shifting. I had thought of it as a dial, twist it to transform, twist the opposite way to return. But when I tested twisting the dial back from full shift, something unexpected happened. At about 3/4, my body collapsed into a normal-sized tiger. Not the giant beast, not the half-shifted form I had been chasing, but a fourth shape entirely. That was why I kept overshooting the half-shift. My forms weren't like the tribe's 3. Mine were 4, strengthened human, half-shift, normal tiger, and the dire tiger. The discovery answered one question but raised more. I could hold the half-shift for a minute at best, teeth gritted, concentration razor thin. Any slip, and I'd tumble straight past it into the next form or snap back to human strength. It was progress. But it was also a reminder of how much further I still had to go. My stomach rumbled again as I crouched above the trail, the scent of sheep still lingering faintly on the wind. I'd been waiting for hours, every muscle coiled, the perfect ambush set. Then came the wrong sound. Not hooves. Not bleating. But voices. I flicked an ear, nostrils flaring. A moment later, I caught them on the wind, familiar scents. Clan members. A patrol rounded a bend below me, 3 figures making their way up the pass. 2 from the horse clan by their gate, 1 from the bird clan with feathers braided into his hair. Their talk carried easily over the snow, calm, unhurried, the kind of tone that told me this was a routine check, nothing more. I let out a silent sigh, shoulders sagging. The herd would be gone now. Sheep didn't linger when voices carried across the ridges. My stomach voiced its complaint with another growl. The patrol paused briefly where I'd passed earlier, one of them crouching to brush snow away from a half-melted paw print. "Tiger," the bird clansman said, his tone flat. "Big one," one of the horsemen agreed, glancing around out of habit. But there was no edge of alarm in his voice, just acknowledgement. A note for the day's report. After a short exchange, they moved on, their conversation fading into the distance. Only then did I stand, snow sliding from my fur in sheets. My tail lashed once in frustration. Not at them, they were just doing their job, but at the lost meal. Hours of waiting, gone in a heartbeat. I padded down the ridge, nose low, testing the air. No sheep. No chance today. Training, patience, control, that was what I had come out here for. But training on an empty stomach was its own kind of lesson. It had been about a month of training on my own, and I felt it was time to return to the village. This training built the foundation that I could build on, it would just take some time and practice. I made my way back to the spot I had found at the beginning of this training and pulled out my pack, carrying it in my mouth. I made my way toward the village, deciding to stay in my tiger shift until I was closer so the trip would be easier. About a mile out from the village, I shifted back and, taking the clothes from my pack, got dressed. The clothes felt a little weird, hell, even walking on 2 feet felt weird. But I got used to it by the time I entered the gate. I wasn't really surprised that Rohan was waiting for me, more curious than anything. "How did you know I was coming?" Rohan just pointed up, and I saw what had to be a vulture of some kind, judging from the size of it. "Nothing gets close without us knowing." I just shrugged my shoulders. "Well, I am back and rather hungry. Let me get some food, and we can talk at the hut." Rohan just fell in step beside me. "How did the training go?" You get to your half-transformed state yet? I did, but holding it is another matter. Just standing still requires all my effort to keep it for a minute. No way I can fight with it yet. But I am happy with where I am in my training for now. We reached the village square, the familiar sense of cooking fires and stone mixing in the cold late February air. For the first time in weeks, the buzz of people pressed around me, voices, footsteps, the low rhythm of daily life. After the silence of the mountains, it felt almost overwhelming. I collected food from one of the cooking fires and made my way towards the hut. Once we were out of the crowd, Rohan spoke again. There were some interesting rumors just after you left, which had the village in quite a stir. Some bird clan members came back from a patrol with stories about huge tracks that resembled tiger paw prints if you discounted the size of them. But then they stopped appearing, no one found more than regular tracks. Knowing what he was asking, I had no problem telling him. Honestly, I didn't think it mattered much. Yet, I found a new shift for myself. Same tiger as always, just normal size. It was the reason I have been having so much trouble gauging how much fire to pull in to get my half-shift form. Rohan's brows lifted ever so slightly. 4 shapes instead of 3. I nodded. Human, half-shift, normal tiger, and the big one. The dire tiger. Makes things more complicated, but maybe also more useful. I think I am about done with my training, with the politics here trying to tie me down. It may be best for me to start thinking about heading home. Rohan fell silent until we got to the hut of my grandmother. I will see you in the morning, Thomas. I guarantee that Dorothy will be looking for you, and I doubt who may will be far behind. Sleep well and think deeply about what leaving here could mean for you. I entered the hut and ate my food before crashing out on the bed. Tomorrow would bring tomorrow's problems. Tonight I just wanted a good night's sleep. Chapter 123, Clearwater. Leah POV. My vision blurred red as I stormed through the front doors of the school, shoving them open so hard the metal bent beneath my hands. I didn't even notice the dent, I was so lost in my anger. The echo of the door impacting the wall rang out behind me. That bitch, Stephanie's words played on a loop in my mind. The tone was like poison soaking my brain and fueling my rage. It was like a broken record playing only for me, and I couldn't shut it off. Face it, Leah. You're just not good enough for Sam. Emily will be a better fit. I don't know why you ever thought you'd be with him forever. You were just a placeholder, something for him to practice on until Emily came along. My whole body trembled, the rage clawing for release. I threw my head back and screamed, the sound tearing from my throat but doing nothing to burn out the fury. Fucking Myers! I roared, the name ripping from me like a curse, because the scream alone wasn't enough. I dragged in deep, ragged breaths. Each inhale filled my chest until I thought it would split open, each exhale burst out hot and violent, like I was a dragon vomiting fire. My arms shook with the vibration of my rage, muscles twitching like they were trying to tear loose from my skin. My heartbeat pounded so loud it drowned out the world. My bra felt like a vice, my shirt collar felt like a noose. The air around me shimmered, or maybe my vision was warping, heat waves distorting everything. My skin burned, too tight, as though something beneath it was swelling, pushing, demanding to get out. I clenched my fists, nails biting into my palms. I fought to steady my breathing, to force myself back into control. But it wasn't working. Not until I latched onto one single thought, the memory of my fist smashing into Stephanie's smug face. The crunch of cartilage, the sudden gush of blood. That moment of brutal, perfect silence after. My muscles loosened by degrees. My lungs stopped clawing for air. The fire dimmed to embers, hot but containable. Great, I thought bitterly. Now I have to relieve violence just to stay sane. That's not worrying at all. I shook my head, and in doing so, my eyes took note of the random stares my outburst had earned me. I sighed and ducked my head, letting my hair fall forward like a curtain as I continued the walk home. My steps pounded harder than they needed to, but I forced myself to think about mundane things instead of replaying Stephanie's words. Dinner. Right. Mom would be waking soon for her night shift at the hospital, and she'd want food ready before the chaos of another shift on her feet. Dad should still be at work. Seth would be home not long after me, and if there wasn't a snack waiting, he'd raid the fridge and leave nothing but crumbs. Normal thoughts. Safe thoughts. But when I pushed open the door to the house, the smell of coffee and the low hum of the TV told me Dad was already home. That was wrong. Dad. I called, my voice soft and hesitant. I didn't want to wake Mom early. In here, came his soft reply from the couch. I walked in to find him leaning back in his lazy boy, remote in his left hand, his face pale in the glow of the screen. He smiled at me, but it was a tired, thin sort of smile. His right hand rubbed absently at his left shoulder, fingers pressing into the muscle like he was trying to ease out a knot. You okay? I asked, frowning. Just a long day, he said, waving me off. Came home early. Figured I'd let your mom catch her nap without me stomping around. But his hand didn't stop moving against his shoulder. I caught the way he winced when he shifted too quickly, the way he sucked in a slow breath like it hurt more than he wanted me to see. I pressed my lips together. I didn't want to add my mess on top of whatever this was. Mom was going to tear into me the second she heard from the school, and Dad didn't need the stress of hearing about another fight. I forced myself to nod and head toward the kitchen. I'll get started on food. Seth should be home soon. Dad hummed something that was supposed to sound reassuring, but when I glanced back, his hand was still on his shoulder. The front door creaked open half an hour later, then eased shut with exaggerated care. Seth's voice came in a whisper shout, like he couldn't help himself but still knew better. Leah? Dad? Smells like food. I rolled my eyes but felt some of the fire in my chest cool further. Typical Seth, always hungry, always loud, but smart enough to tiptoe when Mom was sleeping. Waking her early was basically suicide. In the kitchen, I called back, keeping my voice low. He padded in, light on his feet, dropped his backpack as gently as he could manage. His hair was wind-blown, cheeks flushed from the run home. Hey, Dad! You okay? From the living room came Dad's reply, quiet but steady. Just resting. Don't worry about me. Seth gave me a grin like he didn't fully believe him but wasn't about to press. He reached for a carrot stick from the counter, and I smacked his hand with the flat of the knife. Snack later. You'll ruin your dinner. He muffled a laugh, rubbing his knuckles, and for a second the tension in the house eased. But peace never lasted long here. The bedroom door slammed open, and the sound alone was enough to make both of us flinch. Mom came marching out, her hair mussed from sleep, eyes sharp with fury. Leah Clearwater. Her voice cracked through the house like a whip. Do you want to explain to me why the school called, waking me up, to tell me about you breaking Stephanie Meyer's nose? I froze, knife halfway through a potato. My stomach turned cold. Seth shot me a quick look, wide-eyed. He knew as well as I did this was bad. Mom stood there with her arms crossed, face tight with exhaustion and anger. I work 12-hour night shifts to keep this family running, and you can't go a single day without causing trouble? Do you even think before you act? The heat under my skin flared, sharp and sudden. I tried to bite it back but failed. She started it. Mom's eyes narrowed. I don't care who started it. You always finish it, Leah. You're the one dragging this family's name through the mud. Again. The words stung, fueling the fire clawing to get out. My body trembled, my breath came harsh, and I could feel the shimmer around me again, vision distorting at the edges. Mom, Seth said carefully, his voice low, like he was trying not to wake a bear he knew was already standing on two legs, maybe. Stay out of this, Seth, Mom snapped, never looking away from me. Leah needs to hear it. You're not a child anymore, Leah. You can't keep acting like... Like what? Like I'm broken? Like I'm not good enough? The words ripped from me, raw and jagged. The heat inside me surged, too strong to hold back. My body snapped, tore, reformed. The scream in my throat twisted into a growl as I collapsed forward onto 4 massive paws. The kitchen barely containing me. The room went dead silent. Mom staggered back, her face ashen, eyes wide. Seth's jaw dropped, his whole body frozen. And then Dad. He jumped to his feet, his eyes locked on me, his face white as bone. His hand clutched at his chest, his breath rasping like he couldn't pull air in. No, no, oh God! Harry! Mom screamed, lunging toward him. But his body buckled before she reached him, collapsing sideways onto the floor. Dad! Seth's voice broke, panicked. His hands reached for him, but they never got there. His whole body locked up, trembling violently as if struck by lightning. His skin rippled, bones cracking, his scream tearing into a howl. Where my little brother had been a heartbeat ago, a wolf now stood smaller, unsteady on 2 long legs, his fur bristling in every direction. He stumbled, paws scrabbling for purchase on the slick floor, eyes wild with fear. His first shift wasn't strength or rage, it was pure, terrified instinct, born from the sight of Dad collapsing in front of him.